And sources, I just keep flashing this slide. And this is what we did last time. We did a quick review of the core concepts, primarily hashing and signing and what blockchain is all about. And then actually going through the whole process of digitally signing a transaction. So we created a transaction which was a certificate for this class, and I showed you how you go generate public-private keys and a digital wallet kind of stuff, and then how using case private key certificate is signed by taking its hash first, then you encrypt the hash and append it as a digital signature. And anybody who want to verify only needs case public key, and so they have case public key, and using case public key they themselves do the hash and then decrypt the signature, and then they match. If it matches, it means it is verified. So it is kind of that simple. And so we'll just keep learning about that.
सर यहाँ पर एक छोटा सा क्वेश्चन है सर, वो जब आप कहते हैं कि डिक्रिप्ट करना है उसको, तो सर अगर उसी सॉफ्टवेयर में जो आप इसमें दिखाया बनाते हैं, अगर उसी को यूज करके डिक्रिप्ट कर रहे हैं, तो सर वो तो दो इनपुट्स मांगते हैं, पब्लिक प्राइवेट की। नहीं, इट विल ओनली आस्क फॉर अ पब्लिक की। आपने डिक्रिप्ट करना है ना, अगर कोई चीज़ सिर्फ पब्लिक की चाहिए होती है, उसके अंदर वो उसने बनाई हुई है पब्लिक प्राइवेट की, बट ओनली इफ यू गिव इट अ पब्लिक की, और वो तो उसको डिक्रिप्ट कर देगा वो, सही है ना, 100% करेगा डिक्रिप्ट। सो उसमें असल में उसने हर चीज़ डाली हुई है उसने, कि अच्छा आप कीज जनरेट कर लें, इनक्रिप्ट कर लें, डिक्रिप्ट कर लें, बट डेफिनेटली इल डिक्रिप्ट ओनली इफ यू हैव अ पब्लिक की। हाँ, चाहे आप अपनी पब्लिक, लेकिन यू नीड टू मेक श्योर कि उसी सॉफ्टवेयर से आपकी जो आपने प्राइवेट की है उसी सॉफ्टवेयर में डाल के आपने इनक्रिप्ट किया हुआ है, ठीक है। So today we will cover, definitely we'll go and do a quick review, but a very interesting two challenges that people are still facing in permissionless blockchain, like public blockchain, जो कि सबसे बड़ी जो दो हैं, they are Bitcoin and Ether. So the challenges are fork. So the forks are made, and sometimes there is nothing they can do about it. Fork, so need to learn about the fork, that what fork is and why it is created and how people kind of live with it. And the other one is the challenge of the consensus algorithm, that you also spend a lot of time in solving a hard problem where you have to generate a number of zeros, leading zeros, and that is how they achieve consensus. So it's a very difficult way, or very energy consuming way for these cryptocurrencies to generate a consensus. But perhaps for them that is the most used and way to generate a consensus. We'll study about that, and in this we'll see how the permission blockchain, which is kind like Hyperledger, have resolved this issue of, because still it is a decentralized, even if it is permission, but still there are many nodes, and there are many nodes, though you only allow them, so there is a central kind of administrator who allows these nodes to be part of the network, but still they need to solve the same two problems, which can result into a fork being generated, and what type of consensus algorithm they use to make sure that every distributed node has same copy of the ledger. See, so it is like in this class, if I give you a paper, everybody, and then you are not talking to each other even. See, and there are different people who are giving you input, and you need to figure out which input is the correct input, and you are appending it. And somehow the scheme needs to make sure that if end of the day, once I collect, and there may be hundreds and thousands of entries, every entry should have the same thing. So anybody who just puts something else will have a different ledger altogether. See, and you are not talking to each other, and you are getting different inputs. You have to drop some, and you need to select one. See, so this is the challenge which a distributed computing where permissionless means any node can become part of the net. There must be many malicious nodes as well, and they are trying to confuse every node that no, you should do this, not this, you know. So this is the challenge which what people have solved for permissionless blockchain. But permission blockchain, you have more control. Okay? And so this is what we are going to cover today. So this is the difference between permissionless and permission blockchain. In permissionless blockchain is primarily used for an unregulated, so to say, shadow currency, which is the cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ether, and stuff. Whereas in permission blockchain, there is no concept of cryptocurrency because you are just using it in an enterprise. So usually there is no such concept where the cryptocurrencies are being exchanged. Okay? So this concept is not there. The second big difference is that you have anonymity. People don't want to reveal their identity if they are part of permissionless block. It's just a public address, so nobody knows who owns this address, right? किसी को नहीं पता कि who has this much of money and it is being traded, and so it is kind of, you don't want anybody does not want to reveal his or her identity once they are in a permissionless blockchain where they are trading cryptocurrencies. You only need to have a wallet which has a public and private key. So nobody knows that who is actually trading. But in this case, in permission blockchain, identity is central to a permission blockchain. Because why? Because it is permission. Unless you don't reveal your identity, I may not allow you to be part of the network. Even if you have a valid identity. This is another interesting thing. For example, outside, people showing their digital identity or identity card, they may have a valid identity card, but if they are not K student, we may not let them enter in the premises, you know. So even you have a valid identity, still you may not be authorized to be part of the network. So this is also another concept that they got to make sure that even people with valid identities may not become part of the network because they are not allowed. So there has to be provisions in the permission blockchain where you are controlling the authorization, where you check identities. So got to check the identity, everybody who has an identity and may be just part of the organization, but he is not part of the network. Okay? So this is something that you need to create. So this is a big difference between permission and permissionless blockchain. Identity, digital identity is central to permission blockchain. Anonymity is central to permissionless blockchain. Then there is a proof of work. Okay, so you got to have a proof of work, but the permission blockchain does a proof of work with selective endorsement. It selects the nodes who would help the network to do the proof of work. Yes, this is a valid transaction. Yes, this is a valid transaction. So the transactions are happening at a very fast rate, and in a distributed fashion, where every node, every peer in the network has a copy of the transaction, and somebody has to endorse, okay, yes, all these transactions are right transactions. So for example, if you are registering courses, like the example we took, and you may not be a registered student, and you may have an identity, or you may not be allowed to just take a course for some reasons. So then there are people who are actually running that smart contract, checking whether you are eligible to do that or to do that transaction or not. And in that case, transaction is you registering a course. Okay, so there are endorsers which will first check, yes, you are allowed, and then they let you allow, and then all the transactions will then they happen in the network. And here, every thing on which the transaction is happening in a permission blockchain, everything on which a transaction is happening is called an asset. Okay? So you registering a course, you are an asset. Okay? if you are manufacturing cars, car is an asset. Okay, so but here you have assets, and asset has some properties where we say a key value pair. So there is a key, and key has a value, and you make them into a pair to put them in the world state. Okay, a key value pair. We will keep seeing these things for permission blockchain. So, and there it is cryptocurrency. Okay, so actually the currency that is being transacted. So transactions are happening on cryptocurrencies, and their transactions are happening on asset. A car changing honor, a car changing color, a car having an accident. Okay, so there is an asset, and on asset the transactions are happening, changing the state or value of an asset. And the keys are the parameters, and one of the parameters changing value got to be recorded as a transaction. Okay, so this is for businesses. Okay, and as right from the first lecture I have been saying, my interest is not in cryptocurrency. My interest is in using blockchain for businesses. Okay, so this is our interest, and even perhaps cryptocurrency is not, so to say, legal in Pakistan. There are no exchanges, but people are still trading. I'm not saying you should not trade or do, but our interest for this course is to learn about blockchain for businesses, and where still there is a shared ledger. Okay, so there is a shared ledger across the business network. So there are many nodes, and every node has a copy of the ledger. And there may be multiple ledgers. So this is a difference. So there may be, in a network, as we saw, there may be multiple channels, and every channel may have a different ledger. And a smart contract, this is the business terms embedded in transactions database and executed with transaction. So once an asset changes value, a smart contract is invoked. So there are client applications. The assets have these applications, or people who are representing assets have these applications, and through the application they request for a transaction, invoke a contract, right? If you are registering for a course, you are invoking a contract, and if you're doing this across 2 campuses, so you are invoking a contract, and based on the contract, you as an asset, your value will change, you will become a registered student. So a smart contract is important, and then the privacy here is important. In permissionless blockchain, there is no privacy. The privacy is only that you don't have an identity. So that's why perhaps you don't care. Here, privacy is also central to the businesses. You don't want to reveal, if you're dealing with one organization as a vendor, for example, you don't want to tell the other vendor that this is what you are dealing with, and this is the price you have set up for a common item which you are exploring with 2 different vendors. So privacy is important. So ensuring appropriate visibility, transactions are secure, authenticated, and verifiable, and also privacy has to be maintained. An element of trust, obviously. Transactions are endorsed by relevant participants. For example, if it is a result, a transaction has to be endorsed by head of the department, dean, controller exam, registrar office, and only then it becomes, so there has to be an element of trust in the transaction. That's how you build element of trust, that all the relevant participants got to sign that transaction for that transaction to have an element of trust. See? So we already know many benefits, but I just put this slide for you to look at. Interestingly, Pakistan is also moving towards blockchain, and this is what HEC, very interesting. And I know in this class almost everybody can do this, though they are asking World Bank's consultants to come and explain. Okay, so this is your assignment number 6, which I'll send to World Bank consultants. This says Higher Education Commission, under its higher education development in Pakistan, project plans to procure blockchain solution for all higher education institutions. I just saw it yesterday. Okay, a platform based on blockchain technology will enable institutions and authorities to securely create, maintain, attest, and verify academic credentials and certificates for all stakeholders. That's all you have to do. Like the transaction, like this is what we were kind of discussing, and this you got to do as an assignment, that HEC is buying the software from, I know because World Bank is involved, so they'll be getting it at least 20 times the cost. Okay, because World Bank से पैसा आना है तो उन्हीं को जाना है, and they'll make sure that no Pakistani should do this. So that's how they play it. But it's okay. But at least we know that now the governments are moving towards blockchain, and HEC is taking a lead. This procurement will be done in accordance with World Bank procurement regulations for IPF borrowers. So we have borrowed money from the World Bank. I think they have borrowed about $25 million just to buy these type of softwares. A document explaining the overall scope extra is posted for download at this. So you can just download this. So what are the requirements? HEC would like the interested potential bidders to join a virtual outreach meeting in this regard, where HEC and World Bank staff will explain the procurement process and answer queries. So you can also attend this World Bank briefing, where they will be explaining what they want, but I'm sure that you will understand and you may be able to even ask intelligent questions. The virtual meeting will take place on December the 10th from 10 to 12 noon Pakistan Standard Time. To access the virtual event, please contact procurement help desk at HEC this. So you can, if you want to be part of this, and it's pretty simple, right? So what you do is every university should have its own CA, like CFA, CAK, CNS. So it should have a CA, and you may want a hierarchical CA, like the regional HECs may have an intermediate CA, and then HEC has a root CA, so that you have a hierarchy. So a university which has a certification authority primarily is all the students are registered for their digital identity with the CA. So they have a digital wallet where they generate their public-private key, and the public key is in X.509 as a certificate goes back to the digital ID that yes, this is your public key and it is certified. Har ek ki public key is certified. And similarly, anybody who wants to verify that the degree is actually coming from FAST, they need to get the public key of the FAST. So FAST as a CA also generate a public-private key pair, and its public key is basically is certified from CA regional. So CA regional says yes, this is FAST public key. Anybody in certification or certificate authority, we covered it in the last lecture. We spent a lot of time in learning about CA. तो आप पिछला lecture जरूर देखिएगा. CA जिसमें हमने बहुत डिटेल से कवर किया, ठीक है? तो CA is the certificate authority, and obviously if you have not covered that, so you will not even understand how you will do it. So CA जो है हमने बहुत डिटेल में कवर किया था. केस की मैंने आपको पब्लिक कीज दिखाई थी हर एक की, और फिर CAs हमने देखे थे जो कि we don't need to register ourselves with international CAs. We can just have for this system degree verification, we can have our own hierarchy of certification authorities where HEC, or if we want to, we can actually get our organization certified by a CA as well. There is no harm in it. लेकिन आप अपने भी बना सकते हैं, क्योंकि इंडिविजुअल्स के लिए मुश्किल हो जाएगा हर एक के paying $9 to have a digital identity and getting your public key CA'd from a certification authority. उसके लिए मुश्किल हो जाएगा. So it's easier that you have a CA and then you are giving digital identities as a certificate to every student. हर एक स्टूडेंट के पास पब्लिक की उसकी आ गई है, ठीक है? और आप अपनी प्राइवेट की से एज एन इंस्टीट्यूशन, आप अपनी प्राइवेट की से उसके जितने ट्रांसक्रिप्ट्स हैं, you are signing that. How do you sign that? It's very simple. That you just take hash of it and then you encrypt it with your private key and you append that and you give it, put it in the wallet of the students. How student requests by signing with his private key, sending it to you. If he's a registered student, you have his public key, and you check whether the request is actually coming from a registered verifiable students, and yes, you verify yes, this is the request is coming because it comes with the digital signature of the students, and you say this is his transcript, so you send it. Anybody who wants to verify only needs to have, and you can have multiple signatures as well if you want. You say no, regional HEC will also affirm signature, and there you may want, because all digital, you say there'll be 3 signatures. Like on many certificates you have 3 signatures. You say, okay, we sign, and then you send it to regional HEC, they sign, then you send it to the HEC, they sign with their private keys, and so the certificate has 3 signatures. So verification from HEC, regional HEC, from the institute. So anybody who is verifying, depending upon what type of verification he is doing, he can basically verify all the 3 signatures, being just having the public keys of the. So you can have a setup. And inside how the blockchain works is that you have the head of the department as a peer, you generate channels, and the registrar, and so everybody who is a stakeholder has a peer on the blockchain network. So I'm sure that with little review of our last lecture and what we are going to study today, you should able to at least conceptually do this as an assignment, that how this system will work. And then you can, your verification is once you go and attend what the World Bank is saying, that how they are perceiving that this will be done. जी मैन इन द मिडल अटैक के लिए ही तो सीए होता है. नहीं देखें, आपने अपनी प्राइवेट की अपने तक रखी हुई है. जब तक योर प्राइवेट की इज टू योर सेल्फ ना, मैन इन द मिडल अटैक कैन डू नथिंग. ये हमने पिछली दफा भी आपका सवाल मैंने आपको दिखाया था कि मैन इन द मिडल अटैक क्या कर सकता है, सर्टिफिकेट में अपना नाम डाल सकता है, ठीक है, हैश उससे मैच नहीं होगा, या अपना सर्टिफिकेट यूज कर सकता है, उधर वेरीफाई हो जाएगा, ये तो वो है ही नहीं. सो दीज आर द ओनली 2 थिंग्स ही कैन डू. वंस यू सेंड मी योर सर्टिफिकेट, देयर इज अ मैन इन द मिडल, देयर आर ओनली 2 थिंग्स ही कैन डू. ठीक है, एक आपकी पब्लिक की को रिप्लेस करके अपनी पब्लिक की डालेगा, तो आपका सिग्नेचर नीचे चेंज हो जाएगा. ठीक है, हैश चेंज हो जाएगा, हैश चेंज हो जाएगा तो चेंज हो जाएगा. दूसरा ही अपना सर्टिफिकेट डाल देगा, तो मुझे पता लगेगा ये तो आप हो ही नहीं, ये तो कोई और है. ठीक है ना. सो बोथ आर कवर्ड. मैन इन द मिडल, सीए इज टू कवर मैन इन द मिडल अटैक. जी जी जी. नहीं देखें, नहीं वो कॉपी नहीं कर सकता. उसके लिए ये होता है कि आप ना जाएगा आपको ही असल में, बिकॉज इट विल बी सेंड टू योर एड्रेस. बिकॉज अगर उसने उसको कॉपी करके भी मुझे भेजा, यू गेट अ कॉपी, तो ही कैन नॉट गेट अ कॉपी. से यू गेट अ कॉपी बिकॉज इट विल गो टू यू डायरेक्टली. अच्छा, दूसरा ये है कि समटाइम्स यू मे ऑल्सो वॉन्ट टू जनरेट a 6-digit code, and where you also include the time. You say that this request is only valid for 10 seconds. So once you generate a request, ठीक है, वो टाइम को भी हैश में डाल देगा. So it takes the time, current time, put it in the hash and send it to me. Okay, so and time quantized for 10 seconds. So 10 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 seconds. So I have now this 6-digit code, which basically has time and hash in it. So I open this. So if he is trying to replicate, okay, I'll find out कि ये तो इसने गलत भेजा, and you can just play with the resolution of the time. So usually once they are doing this, they also ask you include time as well and hash it, and you know. So 2 critical challenges in public blockchain networks. They're very interesting. One is that for Walaikum Assalam.
Sir, I have a question here.
जी जी.
You can ask me.
Please.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Okay, sir. Actually, my question is that you have talked about CAs, everything. It's absolutely very clear now.
जी जी.
So now my question is, how you use the blockchain for this type of transaction?
जी. How we use blockchain for this type of transaction? How we use blockchain is that let's say कि आप इंस्टॉल करते हैं Hyperledger Fabric, ठीक है. So you decide to use our frameworks. So you can definitely use a local copy of Ethereum or even a local copy of Bitcoin as well, or there are many. There was some guy who came and meet me, was representing Fortum in Pakistan. So this is also a public blockchain, but you can make a local copy of Fortum. They have their own digital currency, and you can it has a smart contract as well built into this. So once you install this, it basically, once you install it, so you can establish different, you can establish CAs, this is what we are going to study for next 2-3 lectures actually. ठीक है ना? You install MSPs, you make channels, on channels you have peers. तो अब ये पूरा एक इसका setup है, and we will see that how you first design. So our perspective is you learn how to design, and once you know that अच्छा ये CA बन गया, and then there is a client application, and this client application has a digital wallet. So digital wallet is storing the public private keys, and through the application you are invoking a smart contract which is run in the peers, and it gets into a transaction. MSPs basically let an identity to perform some role. So it checks the identity and performs some roles. CA gives you a digital certificate, and it does not only give you a digital certificate to a person, it gives a digital certificate to MSP, to peers, because everyone has to identify itself in the network. And then there is an orderer, so who basically puts all the transaction in order. And so it's quite complex. Why it is complex? Because they want to have a setup which can almost handle any kind of businesses and their transactions. Okay, so a learning will take some time because of this generic framework which covers so many use cases. Okay, so today we will see a part of it and with an example, and then we slowly will get more and more into this. So let's अब ये स्टडी करते हैं fork क्या होता है. What is a fork? ठीक है. So we'll keep coming. So in the next 2-3 lectures we shall be spending getting into details of how you design a business blockchain network. Achha, but we need to understand what the business blockchain, the problem the business blockchain has solved, and what problem is there in the permissionless blockchain. So in permissionless blockchain there is this concept of fork. So Bitcoin forks are split that happens in the transaction chain based on different user opinions about the transaction history. If like there are 4 people who think differently because they are not talking to each other, okay, and they may put a transaction because everybody is sending transactions, some transactions are dropped and some transactions are not dropped. So they may just go in one way, and we will see why, and they make a fork, like the 2 parallel streams start running, 2 chains of blocks start running. Okay, so it creates new versions of Bitcoin currency, and after a while, once people realize if a fork can sustain itself, so they have to name it a new currency, and that start trading in the market as well. We will see how. So reason is there is no central authority which says no, you shut up and you. जिस तरह हम पाकिस्तान में लाइनें बनती जाती हैं 4-4. So either the somebody comes and says कि एक लाइन बनाओ, और you have no other option but to start serving those 4 lines जो कि बन गई हैं. So there is not one line which you are serving, there are 4 lines, and you say अच्छा, and you are serving and trying to just do justice. And so this is what happens, and there are different buying opportunities for the cryptocurrency. ये देखें Bitcoin के साथ क्या होता है. Okay, इधर से मैं आपको दिखाता हूँ. So Bitcoin, so a fork could not sustain itself. Fork bana, could not sustain itself because another blockchain was just happening and it was gaining in length. So थोड़ी देर बाद मैंने कहा no, this is not a valid blockchain. So people independently they said no, this seems like not a valid blockchain. Throw it away. ठीक है, ये टूट गई. ठीक है, this चली गई, ये चली गई, इधर होते होते यहाँ पे फिर एक और पैरेलल में बन गई ब्लॉकचेन. ठीक है, so it's another chain started happening, and then there here another blockchain, say Lipton coin, and I'll tell you why this happened. यहाँ पे गई लेकिन ये अनइंटेंशनल ब्लॉकचेन फोक बना, समटाइम्स इट इज इंटेंशनल, ओके, ये जाके यहाँ पे खत्म हो गया। ये कोई अब ये चलते जा रहे हैं, जैसे अब यू सी देयर आर मेनी बिटकॉइन हैपनिंग इन पैरेलल, ओके। ये कोई बिटकॉइन डार्क है, ये बिटकॉइन गोल्ड है, बिटकॉइन डायमंड एंड डजन्स ऑफ फोर कॉइन्स, दिस इज बिटकॉइन core, this is Bitcoin SV, this is Bitcoin Cash ABC, right? So because of reasons we'll shortly figure out, so there are many Bitcoins and they all are trading in the market with different values, okay? So if you go and nodes different हो गए ना, partitioned हो गया network ना, so there are different nodes and you may be part of both with different your wallets, you may be with different nodes that you say I will download this software as well and I'll download this. It's like browsers. Sometimes it asks you, yeah, iOS है मेरे पास ना. It keeps asking me, should I update to iOS 15.0 and I say no. Okay, so I'm running an old version of iOS and you are running a new version of iOS. Somebody is running a very old version of iOS. Okay, so there may be things that his iOS, which is very, very old, will not support. Okay, so a transaction comes to him and he says it's an invalid transaction because of reasons, and he will only accept those transactions which are old, which are according to the old criteria. Okay, and whereas a person who has the most updated software would actually accept transactions which are even updated. We will see that why there is a difference. So you see, all these are different Bitcoin core, Bitcoin nodes. So you can go on the internet and find out. For example, this is Bitcoin Cash. Okay? It is trading at this rate, $487.53 US. So Bitcoin Cash, if you come here, so there is Bitcoin Cash ABC है यहाँ पे, and there may be another Bitcoin Cash somewhere. ठीक है? अच्छा, अब फिर आप अगर जाएं, I think BTC1 है शायद. Okay, and then if you go to Bitcoin Cash ABC, so this is a different fork, a different coin which is trading at $227.31 a Bitcoin. ठीक है? So इसमें आपने देख लिया, this was different, this is different, and Bitcoin SV BSV, this is different. So it is trading near $100. Yeah, it's going up and down, but it has a different, altogether a different chain, and it is trading with different rates. So similarly, this is the Bitcoin which is core, and it is trading today. It's going down. जब से मैंने course पढ़ाना शुरू किया ना, it's going down. it hit 66, around 66,000 US dollars. And जी? नहीं, it's nothing to do with that. कुछ और जी, 15 नवंबर को सॉफ्टवेयर भी अपडेट हुआ है. शायद मुझे I'm not because following, but I can find out the reasons why it is going down. ठीक है? जी, जिनके अलग अलग सॉफ्टवेयर हैं. ठीक है, बस हम देखिए होता क्या है. Is how the forks are generated. Now we need to understand. Then we will see that how the forks, you make sure that they are never generated in permission. उधर तो chaos हो जाएगा ना. It'll be a chaos there कि एक के अलग transcripts चल रहे हैं, एक रुपए उसके अलग grade इसके अलग चल रहे हैं. So in a business you don't want that the transactions are split into and there are two different type of contracts that are generating two different kinds of transactions and blocks. In business you don't want to do that. Okay? But here it just happens because you have no control over it, because there are thousands of people. They may or may not update the software. Even if you ask them that we have fixed a bug, they say I don't care. Okay? They say, oh, no, there was like some bug and it was causing this and this, so please now download this software, and they say I don't want to, I'm happy with this. So slowly it'll just generate another chain that you become part of some other chain. Or sometimes you say, okay, I will upload the software, and that software basically generates a new. So this is called hard fork, that you are forcing people, and those who are agreeing, they are running another piece of software which is a new software, and then there are people who are just on the old one. So the new piece of software is making those transactions valid, okay, which are not valid in the those blocks valid which are not valid for some reason, and we'll see how do you gauge the validity of a block. So इस तरह से होता है, can this a block can point to 2, can a block point to 2 previous block? Obviously not. ठीक है, ये नहीं हो सकता, एक ब्लॉक 2 previous block को नहीं कर सकता. Yes, this is how the fork is generated, that there is this block, and for some reason some of the nodes, okay, they think that this is a new block, and some of the nodes they think this is the new block, because you have to think independently. Don't even ask your neighbor that ye block hai na, so you cannot do that. Okay, so based on some criteria you say yes, I think this is the valid block, and you put it in your ledger, you say this is a new block, and a part of the network is saying no, this is the new block, and they have no way of knowing that which is actually the new block. Okay? So 2 versions of history possible. Double spend problem. Yeah, if somebody has done a transaction, A ने B को दिया 2 Bitcoin, and knowing, if somebody is knowing that now 2 have created, इसी ने वही Bitcoin C को भी दे दिया. Okay? Because now, so a double spend problem may also occur. डुप्लीकेशन हो सकती है, ठीक है, क्योंकि अब जो 2 ब्लॉक्स बन गए हैं जो कि अलग अलग माइनर ने माइन किए हैं, और एक पार्ट ऑफ द नेटवर्क इज सेइंग दिस इज द ब्लॉकचेन, वन पार्ट ऑफ द माइनर सेइंग दिस इज द ब्लॉकचेन. सही है. तो अब क्या होता है जी 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 दैट इज द रीजन कि वो कोई बहुत सारे ब्लॉक्स के बाद ट्रांजैक्शंस जो हैं वो वैलिड होती हैं. दिस इज द रीजन, बिकॉज यूजुअली दिस विल हैपन, यूजुअली अ सॉफ्ट फोर्क जो होगा वो जनरेट होगा, बट आफ्टर अ व्हाइल इट विल गो अवे. ओके, एंड दैट्स व्हाई अ ट्रांजैक्शन इज नॉट वैलिड unless 40-50 blocks are happened, and only then you say now the transaction is valid. फिर आप कहेंगे हाँ ये मेरी वाकई पैसे इसको चले गए हैं. So transactions are not valid, and this is the reason it takes a lot of time, few hours for a transaction to be a valid transaction in a Bitcoin network, because there may be a soft fork which will go away. ठीक है, soft core for sure will go away. किस तरह से होगा कि अब एक पे लोग ज्यादा ट्रस्ट करना शुरू कर देंगे. Here there will be more जो proof of work की quantity will be more, so people would say no, this is the valid block. Okay, so after a while one will win over the other, and everybody, because everybody is getting a copy of the new blocks. तो इस नेटवर्क में भी जो थे उनको भी ये ब्लॉक मिला, उनको भी ये ब्लॉक मिला, इस नेटवर्क में जो थे उनको भी ये ब्लॉक मिला, उनको भी. एंड नाउ द पीपल हु हैव एक्चुअली दिस, दे आर थिंकिंग दैट दिस इज अ न्यू ब्लॉक. जैसे नहीं ये तो कुछ और चल रहा है. ठीक है, ये तो चेन जो है ये तो कुछ और, तो दे विल से ओह अपेरेंटली दिस इज नॉट अ वैलिड ब्लॉक बिकॉज देयर इज मोर प्रूफ ऑफ वर्क, सो दिस ब्लॉक विल गो अवे. जिसको इंडिपेंडेंटली मेजॉरिटी सपोर्ट करेगी, यानी कि विदाउट आस्किंग एनीबॉडी सपोर्ट करेगी. जी वो नहीं, वो ट्रांजैक्शन वैलिड, देखें वो ट्रांजैक्शन 30-40 ब्लॉक तक ट्रांजैक्शंस आर नॉट वैलिड ट्रांजैक्शंस. ठीक है, वो ट्रांजैक्शन हैपन नहीं होती हैं जब तक के 30-40 ब्लॉक्स के बाद आपका UTXOs जो हैं वो मूव होते हैं. ठीक है ना. सो एवरी ट्रांजैक्शन विल टेक लॉट ऑफ टाइम जस्ट बिकॉज ऑफ दिस, दैट दे मे बी अ सॉफ्ट फोर्क जो कि किसी की गलती नहीं है, क्योंकि माइनर्स आर माइनिंग and they are just saying okay I have mined, so they are replicating it, and somebody may think यार ये इसने पहले बना लिया तो मैं इसको लगा देता हूँ इधर. ठीक है, and somebody is getting another miner who said कि ये मेरा वो है. so और इसमें बाज़ का टाइम का डिफरेंस बहुत थोड़ा सा होगा. इफ यू लुक एट दी जो ब्लॉक्स नए बन रहे होते हैं उसमें आप देखेंगे कुछ बहुत जल्दी बन रहे होते हैं. एक्चुअली देयर इज वन विच इज अ वैलिड एंड देयर इज अनदर वन विच इज नॉट अ वैलिड ब्लॉक, और इट्स नॉट, वी मस्ट नॉट से इट इज एन इनवैलिड ब्लॉक. जेन्युइनली somebody has mined it, but obviously time difference इतना थोड़ा सा है, only one will survive, and one will survive, the network randomly will decide कि अगर ज्यादा इसके ऊपर चल पड़े लोग तो इसमें proof of work ज्यादा होगा, and everybody will have this algorithm saying कि ओहो मेरे पास तो अब ये 2 बनना शुरू हो गए हैं, तो I should just have just one. So how do you decide? उसका एक उन्होंने तरीका रखा है कि जिसके ऊपर वो एक डिफिकल्टी लेवल होता है, एंड यू काउंट ऑल द डिफिकल्टी लेवल, हाउ मच टाइम miner has spent, how much efforts miner have done in mining this, and वो कहते हैं यार इस पे बहुत ज़्यादा मेहनत लगी है, ठीक है, इसको रख लेते हैं, इस पे ज़्यादा मेहनत लगी है, इसको रख लेते हैं, उसको रहने देते हैं. तो दे जस्ट कीप दिस, एंड वंस दे कीप दिस, ये ट्रांजेक्शन सारी खत्म हो जाती हैं खुद ब खुद. सो दीज ट्रांजेक्शंस बिकम्स इनवैलिड ट्रांजेक्शंस, और ये ट्रांजेक्शन चलना शुरू हो जाती हैं. जी
सर, can we say that a block is first published and then it gets validated?
नहीं, ये नहीं हम कह सकते. देखिए जी, अब ब्लॉक इज जनरेटेड, ब्लॉक इज माइंड. व्हाट इज माइनिंग? वो एक 10 मिनट्स के अराउंड जितनी ट्रांजैक्शन होती हैं फ्रॉम प्रीवियस, जो ट्रांजैक्शन पिछले ब्लॉक में आ गई उनको निकाल कर इट कलेक्ट्स ऑल द ट्रांजैक्शंस, ठीक है, उसको हैश से एक खास तरीके से करता है. दो ट्रांजैक्शन ये मर्कल ट्री बनाता है. 2 ट्रांजैक्शन आर हैश, then 2 transactions are hashed, then 2 transactions are hashed, then these 2 transactions are hashed, then these 2 transactions are hashed, and it gets a Merkle tree root. This is a hash which has hashes of all. If you look at blog, जो blockchain.com मैंने आपको दिखाई थी, it shows you all the transactions and hashes of each transaction. So every transaction is hashed, and then combining those 2 transactions are hashed, then combining 2 transactions are hashed. तो इस तरह करके हैश का एक ट्री बन जाता है. सो हम ये नहीं कह सकते कि ये वैलिड हो गई हैं या नहीं हो गई हैं, बिकॉज पीपल नो कि भाई इट विल टेक सम टाइम फॉर द नेटवर्क टू सेटल डाउन. इट इज अ डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड नेटवर्क, सो दे अलाउ सम टाइम्स फॉर एक्चुअली मूविंग a UTXO from one to another, and after so many blocks they say कि अब मूव होगी एक्चुअल जो है वो. आवर्स लेती है, 2-3 आवर्स. जी नहीं, फोर्क को बनने से कोई रोक नहीं सकता ना. देखें, फोर्क ये है कि हजारों लोग हैं, पीयर टू पीयर ज्वाइन है. पीयर टू पीयर मीन कि एवरीवन इज कनेक्टेड विद 3-4 अदर पीयर्स. ब्रॉडकास्ट नहीं हो रहा, ठीक है, गॉसिप से चल रहा है. इट्स अ गॉसिप. गॉसिप इज मैंने किसी के कान में कुछ कहा, उसने 4 लोगों के कानों में कुछ कहा, उन्होंने 4. सो इट इज द गॉसिप प्रोटोकॉल. इट इज नॉट अ ब्रॉडकास्ट दैट मैंने मस्जिद के लाउड स्पीकर पे ऐलान कर दिया कि ये ब्लॉग बन गया. इट इज नॉट लाइक दिस, ओके, बिकॉज इट इज पीयर टू पीयर. सो यू कैन नॉट स्टॉप this to happen. This will perhaps is happening all the time. Some will perhaps survive a very little time and some may survive a little longer, but usually they'll go away, and ultimately there will only be a one blockchain, provided कि intentionally आपने उसको force नहीं कर दिया, that you have intentionally created a hard, and that's why it is called a hard fork, that you say no, there is a new update, and the people who have downloaded the new update will create a new blockchain, because now the people who are running the old software and the people who are running the new software, they may not be compatible. ठीक है? नहीं 10 मिनट बाद नहीं मिलते, 3-4 घंटे बाद मिलते हैं. ये खत्म हो गया बस. ऑर्फन, दिस बिकम्स ऑर्फन एंड गोज अवे. तो इसकी ट्रांजैक्शन सारी खत्म हो जाएंगी. नहीं या एवरी 10 मिनट अ न्यू ब्लॉक. जी पूछें. हाँ जी, ट्रांजैक्शन कुछ घंटे बाद हैपन होती हैं. हाँ, जरूरी नहीं आपकी ट्रांजैक्शन है भी है कि नहीं है, और हो सकता है आपकी ट्रांजैक्शन इसमें भी आ गई हो, इसमें भी आ गई हो. आप समझ रहे हो? बिकॉज वो भी माइंड किया, किसी ने भी माइंड किया है, ठीक है. और इट कुड हैपन दैट यू हैव ट्रांजैक्शन, योर ट्रांजैक्शन इज हियर एंड हियर, तो वो वैसे ट्रांजैक्शन डबल हो रही हैं. तो एवरी नोड विल जस्ट सेलेक्ट जस्ट वन ब्लॉक. तो एकदम से 10 मिनट के बाद जो है ना, वो आप नहीं करते. अच्छा, इसके लिए इसका हल क्या ढूंढा लोगों ने? नाउ दे हैव एक्सचेंजेस एंड यू हैव अ डिजिटल वॉलेट. अब एक्सचेंज अपने ऊपर सारा बर्डन लेती है, एंड यू डू अ ट्रांजैक्शन, इट हैपेंस राइट अवे, बिकॉज the exchange knows that you have these many bitcoins and you are sending it to him. It says okay. So these are called lightning network. They just transactions are happening very fast, and after a while it is responsibility of the exchange to put those transactions in a blockchain, so that आपको ना फील हो, आप कहते हैं यार मेरे पास तो वॉलेट है, मैंने ऐसे किया ट्रांजैक्शन तो उसी वक्त ट्रांजैक्शन होगी, यस इट विल हैपन, बट हु टेक्स द बर्डन? लाइक ए क्रेडिट कार्ड, यू गो एंड दी बैंकिंग जिस तरह होती है, क्रेडिट कार्ड आपने 1 महीने के बाद पे करना है, ठीक है, और उस बंदे को उसी वक्त पैसे मिल गए, ओके, यू से यू गो यू बाय समथिंग एंड यू गिव योर क्रेडिट कार्ड and the bank knows that after a month actually the bank will get his money, so it is just letting these things to happen. So similarly exchanges will let fast transactions to happen. So आप कहते हैं I don't care कि पीछे network में ये सारा कुछ हो रहा है, so you are not really concerned. Why? Because it is not concerning you, your transactions are happening with lightning speed and you are happy. अब वो जाने exchange जाने उसका काम जाने कि किस तरह से वो सारी transaction को क्लब करके जी 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 बताएं। No, they are not acting as a, they are more working as escrow account, like they are taking this burden and they are just making these transactions, but then they become just a node and you may not want to be, you just may want to be part of the network to do the transaction. जरूरी नहीं है कि आप किसी exchange के थ्रू ही कर रहे हो. If you want, you can just become a node, but then you have to deal with all this. ठीक है, फिर आपको सारों से डील करना पड़ेगा कि you need to understand कि yes, there may be a soft fork and it will take some time for the soft fork to go away. A transaction will happen in 3-4 hours. So you need to deal with that. अभी हमारे ज़माने में हमारे जो बैंकों में आप चेक जमा कराते हैं वो कहते हैं जी अभी ये वेरीफाई होगा आपका साइन, उस बैंक में जाता है, उस बैंक में उसको वेरीफाई करते हैं. So the transaction does not happen. It sometimes takes days if it is going in another bank through your check. ठीक है ना. तो ये ऑर्फन जो है ये अल्टीमेटली इट गोज अवे. अब ये देखें, ये एक एग्जांपल है, गुड एग्जांपल. ठीक है, अब ये 4 peers हैं. सो दीज आर 4 peers. ये तीनों आपस में ज्वाइन हुए हैं, ये दोनों आपस में ज्वाइन हुए. सो दे आर कम्युनिकेटिंग विद ईच अदर. सो दिस इज अ पीयर टू पीयर नेटवर्क. एवरी peer is connected to 3-4 peers. ठीक है, और 2 peers, और so it is like it creates a peer to peer network. So अब देखिए, this is a transaction, this is the hash pointing to the previous block. ये previous block है, ठीक है, इसका hash ये है, and then ये previous है, ये previous को point कर रहा है, और ये new hash है. ठीक है, अब एक नया block mine हुआ. Okay, so a new block is mined and obviously it is pointing 002B, it is pointing to this. Okay, and इसका hash ये है. ओके, अच्छा, अब क्या होगा? वैलिडेशन होती है. एवरी नोड विल वैलिडेट अ ट्रांजैक्शन. एंड वो कहते हैं जी एक ब्लॉक के अंदर ना, एंड दिस इज द रूल, एंड दिस इज व्हाट इज कन्फाइनिंग, रिस्ट्रिक्टिंग अ ब्लॉक टू हैव ओनली फ्यूअर नंबर ऑफ ट्रांजैक्शंस. And all updates are trying to increase this. So they want more transactions to happen. Once there are more transactions, then you can do more trading. So this is a big restriction that a block size must not be greater than 1 megabyte. ये original जो Bitcoin का एक constraint है. Anything which is greater than 1 megabyte, जो node है वो उसको drop कर देगी. वो कहेगी this is not a valid block. जो पुराना सॉफ्टवेयर चला रही है, सही है, this is not a valid block, because a valid block की first condition is that all the transactions combined together must not increase 1 megabyte. So this is a validation rule. A block is added by a node if it is running an old piece of software. The first thing it is going to just drop a block if it has a size which is greater than 1 megabyte. ठीक है, so valid transaction for each input, then it runs the script pub key, script signature, and it makes sure that a valid public address signed by his valid private key is sending this to a valid public address. ठीक है, जो हमने पढ़ा, ये जो ट्रांजैक्शन हमने जो पढ़ी थी UTXOs, उसमें हमने बहुत डिटेल, and log time has happened. Sometimes you say transaction should happen after this much time. Okay, so that time has happened, so that's why the transaction is part of the block. But if a transaction says नहीं कल होना है और उसने इस block में डाल दिया, तो इसे an invalid block, उसे फेंक देगा कि why a transaction is being added once there is a lock time, once the person has said the transaction should not happen now. ठीक है, और उसने माइनर ने क्या करा, उसको भी डाल के ट्रांजैक्शन को हैश निकाल के दिया, drop the block. ठीक है, if the proof of work is not there, अगर 16 zeros लीडिंग zeros नहीं है, I'll just count the number of zeros, I'll say oh these are not 16, I'll drop the block. ठीक है, there is no double spend, he checks that there is nothing which is already spent, so he's going to drop the block. ठीक है, block time stamp अगर बहुत पुरानी है या future की है, is going to drop the block. So ये previous black hash को point नहीं कर रहा, it is going to drop the block. So this is the consensus. It is basically every node in the network is checking this right, this any wrong will result into dropping of the block. ठीक है, तो अब ये हो गया, इन्होंने कहा every node says everything is perfect, so every node will add this as a new block. ठीक है, so the nodes are saying yes, every node is saying everything in the new block is valid, no problem. ठीक है, ये इसमें ऐड हो गया. अब क्या हुआ, किसी ने कहा जी हम अब ये बड़े इस तरह के, आप जब अब हिस्ट्री पढ़ेंगे वो कहेंगे, किसी ने कहा यार ये बहुत छोटा साइज है, हम इसको बड़ा कर देते हैं, और देयर इज अ बग, फिक्स द बग्स, and they're handling major security issues and adding new feature. You cannot make everybody to update the software. Like any कोई ब्राउजर है, अभी क्रोम तो खुद से कर देता है, ठीक है, but then their software they will ask कि जी there is a new upgrade available, so do you want that upgrade, and you say no. ठीक है, so if not everybody is updating, so then what will happen? सही है, let's say कि ये वर्जन 1 पे चल रहे हैं सारे और ये वर्जन 2 पे चल रहे हैं. ओके, अब ये जो है इसका साइज जो है ये थोड़ा सा इस साइज इंक्रीज है इसका, or there is something where it is valid for one network and it is not for one version, it is a valid block, and for the other version it is not a valid block. ठीक है, अब मसला हो जाएगा कि अब वो कह रही है ये जो है, ये कह रही है ठीक है ये वैलिड है, और ये नोट कह रही है कि इट इज नॉट अ वैलिड ब्लॉक. सही है, तो ये इसने तो लगा लिया, all the nodes which are running version 1 of the software will find out that this block is a valid block. ठीक है, वो अपेंड कर देंगे. ऑल द नोड्स विच आर रनिंग द न्यू वर्जन, ठीक है, वुड से दिस इज नॉट अ वैलिड ब्लॉक, सो दे विल नॉट अपेंड दिस ब्लॉक. फोर्क क्रिएट हो जाएगा यहाँ पे. ओके, सो इस तरह से देयर आर सॉफ्ट फोर्क्स. सॉफ्ट फोर्क्स आर यूजुअली बैकवर्ड कंपैटिबल, only adding new rules. Old rule nodes will see new rule blocks as valid. So मसलन बैकवर्ड कंपैटिबिलिटी होगी, उस वर्जन में भी चलेगा, इस वर्जन में. सो यू जस्ट फिक्सिंग स्मॉल बग्स, एंड सो दीज आर कॉल्ड सॉफ्ट फोर्क्स. सो आपके जो वैलिड ब्लॉक्स हैं वो दोनों में वैलिड होंगे. ठीक है, वेयर एज सो दिस इज वेयर व्हाट विल हैपन कि यहाँ पे एक जनरेट होगा, लेकिन अल्टीमेटली ये खत्म हो जाएगा. इट मे अगेन जनरेट, अल्टीमेटली खत्म हो जाएगा. सो बट देयर विल बी ओनली वन ब्लॉक चेन, और जो ऑर्फन ब्लॉक होंगे वो खुद ही खत्म होते जाएंगे. बट इफ देयर इज अ हार्ड फोर्क एंड इफ इट इज नॉट बैकवर्ड कंपैटिबल, ठीक है, सो ओल्ड नोड्स उसमें ऐड नहीं करेंगी, नई नोड्स उसको सिर्फ ऐड करेंगी, एक हार्ड फोर्क जो है वो जनरेट हो जाएगा. इस तरह से 2 chains possibly forever. Okay? So if there is a software upgrade where a version of the software which is not backward compatible, ठीक है, so जिनके पास नई वर्जन है वो एक अलग ब्लॉक बनने शुरू हो जाएंगे वहां पे. ओके, और जिनके पास ओल्ड वर्जन है उसके पास एक और, एंड देन इट स्टार्ट ट्रेडिंग विद अ न्यू नेम, इट स्टार्ट ट्रेडिंग विद अ न्यू नेम. तो दोनों अपने अपने नामों के साथ ट्रेड करना शुरू कर देंगे. एज वी जस्ट सॉ फॉर बिटकॉइन, देयर आर सो मेनी डिफरेंट बिटकॉइंस बीइंग ट्रेडेड, जिसकी हिस्ट्री में जाएंगे आप, इट्स वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग हिस्ट्री. वो सॉफ्टवेयर अपडेट्स ही हैं. ब्लॉक साइज किसने बड़ा कर दिया, उसने और बड़ा कर दिया, कुछ ने कहा हम नहीं मानते. ओके, सो दिस इज हाउ दी, एंड स्पेशली इन इथेरियम में भी इसी तरह से है. ठीक है, सो दिस इज सो इसको हम जी जो नई चेन बनेगी, आप सही कह रहे हो कि बाज़-औक़ात उसकी मार्केट वैल्यू जो होगा ना कम हो जाएगी. एज वी हैव सीन इन बिटकॉइन, जो नए बिटकॉइंस हैं उनकी वैल्यू बहुत कम है जो पुरानी एक चेन चलती आ रही है उससे. ठीक है, सो इट इज अगेन अबाउट पीपल कंसेंसस दैट हाउ डू दे वैल्यू something which is new or something which is old. Same is the case with Ethereum as well. ठीक है, ईथर के अंदर भी इसी तरह से हुआ हुआ है कि इसमें भी आप देखें फोर्किंग हुई हुई है. ओके, सो ये आइस एज वाज द
पीपल या कंसोर्शियम कौन होता है कि जो डिसाइड करता है कि अब हमने एक इसमें अपग्रेड लेके आना है?
जी, ये आमतौर पे माइनर्स होते हैं. ठीक है, दीज आर द माइनर्स. दे डिसाइड दैट because they are miners, so they have a consortium and they sit down and decide that software, जैसा अभी पिछला इसका भी आया, तो they decide. Ethereum ने किया कि एक फाउंडेशन बना दी. So they came up with the ICO, initial coin offering. They split the initial coins they generated into 3 parts. देखिए, बिटकॉइन का स्टार्ट और इथेरियम का स्टार्ट बहुत डिफरेंट है. बिटकॉइन में जो पहली करेंसी जनरेट हुई वो 50 बिटकॉइन थी जो कि माइन की गई. ओके, एंड ही सेड ऑलमोस्ट एवरी 10 मिनट्स यू माइन 50. तो इट स्टार्टेड विद 0 बिटकॉइन. आफ्टर वंस दे स्टार्ट रनिंग द सॉफ्टवेयर 50 बिटकॉइंस वर जनरेटेड. सो बिटकॉइन इस तरह से जनरेट हुए इसके. ओके, सो 0, फिर 50, फिर 100, फिर 150, फिर 200. ओके, दिस इज हाउ. एंड देन इधर जाके इन्होंने इसको हाफ कर दिया. 25 बिटकॉइन जनरेट होना शुरू हो गए. फिर फ्यू इयर्स इन्होंने और हाफ कर दिया. 12.5, आजकल 6.25 रिवॉर्ड है. सो एवरी अराउंड 10 मिनट्स ओनली 6.25 बिटकॉइंस आर जनरेटेड. दे पार्ट ऑफ द नेटवर्क. ठीक है, सो हु डिसाइड्स? द माइनर्स. दे डिसाइड दैट दे वांट अ सॉफ्टवेयर अपग्रेड. जिस तरह से लोग कहते हैं ना चैलेंजिंग है, आपका अभी क्वांटम कंप्यूटिंग आ रही है, तो ये आपकी जो पब्लिक प्राइवेट कीज हैं, ये तो they'll come up with new algorithm, they'll come up with more robust algorithm, so there will be a software upgrade. They say upgrade the software, otherwise you are exposed to these attacks. Okay, and if they find out that a blockchain network is exposed to some attacks, they come up with remedies and they say it's better that everybody should download the new software, otherwise you are exposed to this. And there may be people still say कि नहीं हम नहीं करते, ठीक है, attack होगा तो होगा, you know. So this kind of a mindset. So for Ethereum, they have a foundation. They played very smart. First they generated an initial coin. इन्होंने शुरू में ही कुछ मिलियन coins generate कर लिए. Okay, they said these are our initial coin and they offered it to people. कि जी हम इस time पे we will offer these initial coins to generate a lot of money. And they split this money into 3 parts. The money they generated from initial coin offering, they split it into 3 parts. One goes to a foundation, and foundation basically a not-for-profit foundation whose whole purpose is to make sure that they basically, if there are updates or they are just working for the interest of just common people, for the network, for this cryptocurrency, without any जैसे कहते हैं कि lust for money. So it is a foundation. There are many people which are part of the foundation. So they gave 1/3 to foundation so that foundation can run by itself. It can hire people for very different perspective. One part they gave it to the investors and those. So this part goes to the investors who invested into developing this. So they hired a software company somewhere who wrote this, because very complex software. Ethereum is a framework which is much more complex than Bitcoin, because it has a torrent complete language. It has own language. Solidity is a language which is torrent complete, which has loops and if, else, classes, inheritance. So they spend a lot of money in actually developing Solidity, developing the framework. So they got the investment of Sewa, and the third went to the people who actually develop and invented. So I mean, I think we can take a break. Let's take a 10 minutes break कर ले, 15 minutes break कर लेते हैं. 1:10 हुए, so 1:25 पे वापस आ. अच्छा चलें 10 मिनट के बाद करते हैं. 10 मिनट के बाद. ओके राइट. Okay, so this is the second challenge. Remember I told you there are two challenges. जी जी. उस तरह से कोई फाउंडेशन नहीं है, बट जो कम्युनिटी है वो उनकी कॉन्फ्रेंसेस होती रहती हैं, दे हैव मीटअप्स एंड वेयर दे कलेक्टिवली डिसाइड, स्पेशली द माइनर्स हु हैव इन्वेस्टेड ह्यूमंगस अमाउंट ऑफ मनी, बहुत बड़े बड़े सेटअप्स जिन्होंने इन्वेस्ट किए हुए हैं, दे सिट डाउन एंड दे डिसाइड कि अच्छा हमें कोई नया वर्जन लेकर आना चाहिए, नहीं लेकर आना चाहिए. जी ठीक है जी, वो आ गया है 15. उन्होंने स्मार्ट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट प्राइस का मुझे नहीं पता, लेकिन स्मार्ट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में उन्होंने प्राइमरीली ना उसको चेंज किया, अपने क्रिप्टो जो एल्गोरिथम है ना, हैशिंग को चेंज किया अपेरेंटली, और इसको चेंज किया है, बट दे हैव कम अप विद द न्यू वर्जन. और उस पे आई एम नॉट श्योर दैट हाउ इट इज़ गोइंग टू इफेक्ट के ईथर को, एथेरियम को. लेकिन मैं अपना ज़ाती ख्याल ये है, नोइंग व्हाट आई नो, कि बहुत सारे लोग ना, देयर मेनी पीपल हु आर यूजिंग दी परमिशनलेस ब्लॉकचेन फॉर बिजनेसेस. ठीक है, मेरा ख्याल नहीं करना चाहिए. ठीक है, बिकॉज ठीक है, यू कैन ऑलवेज हैव अ लोकल कॉपी. लेट्स से मैंने डिग्री वेरिफिकेशन करनी है, मैं कहता हूँ अच्छा इथेरियम का प्लेटफॉर्म यूज कर लेता हूँ. यस, आई कैन यूज इथेरियम फॉर श्योर. आई कैन यूज इथेरियम फ्रेमवर्क टू वैलिडेट डिग्रीज. ठीक है, either making a local copy or not even making a local copy. I just say कि नहीं, मैं जो global Ethereum का network है ना, so I'll go there. Those nodes will be running my smart contract, and then I have to pay for a transaction. See, for every remember I showed you the price. Our addition will cost this much. Our storage will cost this much. So then you have to pay for every verification of the degree and every generation of the degree in a global Ethereum ledger. So आपको you have to pay money for that, and then why to get into that type of complexity where you have to pay ether. And let's say you make a local copy, then you have to have hypothetical these virtual ethers, because the framework requires you to pay ethers whether they have some value or not. Why to get in these complications कि अच्छा ट्रांजेक्शन हुई है, इतने ईथर आपने उधर से उठाए हैं जो कि they have no value, but because the framework requires, फिर वो proof of work हो रहा है, फिर वो hashing हो रही है, फिर ये हो रहा है. There is no point in doing all of this. So, but the people, they are still use public blockchain to implement businesses, which I think we should not. ठीक है, once people have realized this, they have come up with the other blockchain which gives you all the benefits of blockchain and which has solved these two big problems. फोर्क नहीं बनना और कॉन्सेंसस किस तरह से होना है. ओके, यू नीड नॉट टू डू अ प्रूफ ऑफ वर्क, दैट इंटेंस प्रूफ ऑफ वर्क कि आपने इतनी इलेक्ट्रिसिटी शहर की पूरी ज़ाया कर दी जस्ट टू डू अ प्रूफ ऑफ वर्क. सो द सेकंड चैलेंज इज द कॉन्सेंसस, कि कॉन्सेंसस इन अ डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड नेटवर्क. इट्स अ प्रॉब्लम. ये नहीं है कि सिर्फ इसके अंदर है, दिस इज अ प्रॉब्लम इन एवरी डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड नेटवर्क, दैट वेयर everybody is independent, taking its own decision and making everybody to think alike, to do something which is the same every node is a challenging problem. ठीक है, और this is called a Byzantine general problem. Byzantine general problem. ठीक है, it's a very famous problem जो किसी ने solve नहीं की थी. Byzantine general problem is a problem which was not solved. Okay, ये इसने सॉल्व की, सतोशी नाकामोटो ने. ही सॉल्व दी Byzantine general problem, and today we'll see what is the Byzantine general problem. ठीक है, so this is the Byzantine general problem that is to be solved. Okay, or so Byzantine fault tolerance, Byzantine general problem के लिए fault tolerant आपने बनाना है. Okay, this is a challenge. This is what these people have been trying to solve. They solved it using proof of work. कि make this so difficult, make this generation of a block so difficult, make it so hard. Not everybody should be able to do this. Okay, so only genuine people could do, and then rest should only verify whether it has come through that proof of work or not independently. Okay, this was one approach, and then people started realizing that it's causing lot of difficulties. You are wasting a lot of power for nothing, for just making people to put this proof of work. You are wasting a lot of power. Then they came up with the proof of stake. Like Ethereum is working on this very aggressively. In next year, they will come up with a version which, instead of doing proof of work, will do proof of stake. And what is proof of stake? It finds out who has what stake in the Ethereum network. Let's say I have 10% stake. So they will let me generate 10% of the block. Okay, because I own 10%. So anybody who owns something will be more concerned. They said, why not to find out the stakeholders? And depending upon the stakeholder, two ways. One is, if I'm the stakeholder and what level of stakeholder I am, you let me generate those many blocks. The second is, if let's say the entire block has, let's say, 500 ether, I commit double the amount, so I put 100 ether, 1000 ether in the network. I say, this is my stake, these 1000 ether is in the network. Okay, if I generate a false block, the network will eat up those 1000 ether. So people say yes, because he is committing these many ethers. Just to say that these 500 ether block is a valid block, they say yes, there is a stake involved, so I have put my stake in the transaction, people will trust me, so I don't have to spend all the electricity. But anybody who has more money will make more money, because you say, I have more money, so you say, okay, I put this, and then there may be a competition. He says, no, I'll put double the amount. Ji. फिर सेंट्रल हो जाता है वो. Yeah, that's what people are basically, जो debate यही चल रही है कि okay, if you bring proof of stake, then you are giving the control. At this point, anybody can mine. If you think that I can mine, you start mining. You don't need to have a stake. You don't need to own 10% of the Bitcoin in order to mine a block. ठीक है? So people are not happy. Like many people says नहीं है तो आप जो अमीर है उसको you are just making him more और अमीर होता जाएगा. ठीक है? So but because of this genuine concern over these consumption of electricity, people are thinking alternative ways. Ethereum is ahead of it, so they already have a beta version, so to say, which you can try. They have a proof of stake, and then they say a full-fledged version will come next year, and so it may result in again generating a fork. The people may not. The many people who would say नहीं जी हमने तो वही proof of work करना है, so we don't trust ये जो नया proof of work आप लेकर आ रहे हो. But it is aggressively working on the proof of stake. So consensus ये होता है कि majority is doing it. So consensus is if majority is 51%, super majority is 66%, unanonymous हम कहते हैं unanonymous decision है कि everybody agrees to it. ठीक है? So consensus होता है कि दो सेंट्रल अथॉरिटी, लाइक अमेरिका में ज्यूरी बना देते हैं कि इसने कत्ल किया है कि नहीं. सो दे हैव अ ज्यूरी एंड वट एवर मेजोरिटी सेज कि इसको फांसी देनी है कि नहीं देनी है, सो द ज्यूरी डिसाइड्स, नॉट अ जज. So if you have a judge to decide, so then it is a central authority. But for you might have seen O.J. Simpson case or this case, they constitute a jury. In jury they just bring normal people. ठीक है? किसी ड्राइवर को पकड़ लेंगे, किसी कंडक्टर. So they have just normal people. So they make a jury, and judge जो है is only just helping them to interpret law. That okay, law says this, law says this. End of the day, it is jury that makes a decision. So that is also a consensus protocol with the people, with independent, and they are asked not to watch media, not to watch news, not to read newspaper, and not to bias their opinion, and they decide about major cases in America are decided. And this is how their system of justice works, that they constitute a jury, and then jury makes all these decisions. It's a good example of a consensus protocol where a jury is making so in blockchain again, because these are independent node, and they must agree on a set of valid transactions representing the change from the current state of the system to another, and consensus must achieve automatically without any human interaction. So blockchain, there is this problem, and as it says, consensus is the process by which all nodes agree on the same ledger, because every node must have a copy of the same ledger. If you think about it, it's a very challenging problem. ठीक है, कि every is not talking to anybody and still has the same copy of the ledger is a very challenging problem. ठीक है, तो इसमें ब्लॉकचेन में एंड कॉन्सेंसस में there are different types of nodes. There is a node which is called a mining node. Mining node is only interested in generating a new block. ठीक है, heavy investment goes into a mining node, and mining nodes have the most invested in the system, as a result have the most power. These nodes actually compute and propose new blocks to the chain according to the system rules. So these are the receivers of block rewards, which often include mining fee. तो ये mining fees भी मिल रही होती है, rewards भी मिल रहे होते हैं, so people invest here. Whereas there is called a full node. Full node only verifies, जो मैंने चीजें दिखाई थी कि if size is less than this, if timestamp is this, if the script works from source to destination, you know, so it says tick, 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 it says yes, all these are valid, so it's a valid block, they put it in their ledger. So every full node must have same copy of the ledger. So full nodes जो हैं उनको they don't get any money for the verification. ठीक है, so there are all other nodes which are full nodes because verification is quick, so उसको verify कर लेते हैं. मेरे ख्याल अभी हम बस एक चीज़ मैं दिखा दूं. फिर लाइट नोड्स होते हैं, वो दे डोंट इवन कीप कॉपी ऑफ द फुल कॉपी, वो सिर्फ उनके पास बैलेंसेज होते हैं कि इस एड्रेस पे इतना बैलेंस पड़ा, सो दे डोंट हैव full copy. They can do the verification and often verify transaction and may not even verify transaction. So the consensus obviously हमें चाहिए होता है. ये है Byzantine general problem. इसको करते हैं, फिर आगे हम इसको डिस्कस करें. वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग प्रॉब्लम. Byzantine general problem is in distributed computing is a very important problem which had not been solved for years. See, वो ये है कि there is an army which has surrounded this fort. See, siege city है, उसके चारों तरफ इसके इधर आर्मी है, उसके जनरल. So this commander has general here, general here, general here. Okay. And there are two strategies which this general wants. One strategy is that everyone should attack. Okay? Everyone should attack the besieged city. Synchronized attack. Everyone should attack. Okay? So they must be decide, or they must retreat. Everybody must retreat. Okay? So, but because the uncoordinated attack or retreat will result in unacceptable losses. And they don't trust the person who is the messenger. Because हो सकता है उसको किसी ने पैसे खिलाए हो, जैसा कौन सा ड्रामा चल रहा होता है इसमें, यही हो रहा होता है सारा. Artugul. This is what is all the time happening in Artugul as well. वो कोई और मैसेज. So Byzantine general problem you can witness in Artugul drama as well. कि अब वो जो मैसेंजर है ना, इस पे भी शक है उन्हें जो है, I mean they have like usually the messengers and even their other like components, even the commander. जी कॉन्सेप्ट ही वहीं से आ रहा है. या दिस इज Byzantine fault tolerance करनी है हमने कि Byzantine general problem को. तो Byzantine generals जो हैं, जो कि here is there is a general, here is a corps commander, here is a corps commander, here is a corps commander. ठीक है, this is their problem. That how to verify कि जो मैसेज आया है ये एक वैलिड मैसेज है, क्योंकि ये मैसेंजर ठीक है ये कर सकता है कि इसको कह दे तू अटैक कर, इसको कह दे तुम रिट्रीट करो, इसको कह दे तुम रिट्रीट करो, खुद भी अटैक कर दे. सो इफ दिस हैपेंस देन दे आर गोइंग टू लूज द वॉर. So this is the Byzantine. If you look at this problem is very thoroughly discussed in literature. कि जी ये जो कंप्यूटिंग की प्रॉब्लम है ये Byzantine जनरल की प्रॉब्लम है, जहाँ पे he may be asked to attack, he may be asked to wait और एक बंदे ने अटैक किया और उसका फिर ये जो ये है उसको साथ अच्छा करेंगे because it's not a well coordinated attack, and the only way for the commander to send the messages through the messengers, and the messengers जो हैं वो compromise हो सकते हैं, messages compromise हो सकते हैं. So attack, wait और surrender में से they need to just decide how to do this. So हम इसको आके so Byzantine general problem outcomes have victory if everybody attacks, as the message is conveyed properly at same time everybody attack, or acceptable retreat without any losses कि everybody retreats, ठीक है, and outcomes is defeat अगर इसने compromise हो गया मैसेज, इधर compromise हो गया मैसेज, ठीक है, इन्होंने अटैक कर दिया, ये दोनों भाग गए, ठीक है, ये दोनों भाग गए, इन्होंने अटैक कर दिया, ये कमांडर भाग गया. So so just a little compromise of the message in a distributed command where they only have to trust the messenger, and though all these things can happen. So this problem is solved by, and we have seen it, but once we come back we see कि उसने इस problem को किस तरह से solve किया, कि उसने जो message है उसको इतना मुश्किल कर दिया बनाना कि नॉट एवरीबॉडी, तो मैसेंजर बेचारा गरीब सा आदमी है, उसकी औकात ही नहीं है कि वो इतना एक्सपेंसिव रिसोर्सेज से एक नया मैसेज क्रिएट कर सके, उसको इतना मुश्किल कर दिया, ठीक है. सो दैट्स द ट्रिक. वो तो ठीक है जी, लेट्स कम बैक एंड टास्क मैनेजमेंट. ओह सॉरी, मेरे ख्याल सबसे जो अहम है ना वो ये है जो सेगवेट जो है, बट मोस्टली आप देखेंगे कि somebody would suggest, जिस तरह से बिटकॉइन XT है, so you can just read about these के क्यों होती हैं, like people are suggesting improvements, then they'll write the code and somebody, a group of people will agree, the other will not agree, तो इस तरह से ये इसमें स्प्लिट होती जाते हैं बिटकॉइन के नेटवर्क में. So coming back to the Byzantine, so I hope that we understand the Byzantine general problem. Where ये जो messages हैं send, but there is some untrustworthiness and which can change this message and results into a defeat. So इस problem को, to resolve this problem, once you have a distributed computing, they say you should have Byzantine fault tolerance होनी चाहिए. A system is considered to be Byzantine fault tolerant if it is resistant to the dilemmas of Byzantine general problem. So distributed computing में the computing system, the whole thing as a system should be BFT. It should be a Byzantine fault tolerant to this typical problem, where if there is a malicious actor and who has this way of changing the messages or the protocols which are running among these independent nodes, so the nodes should independently able to drop that message saying that this is not a correct or a valid message. See? So it is, as it says, Byzantine fault is defined as a failure mode of the system, either failing to function or functioning incorrectly caused by an inability to reach or error in consensus among the system. So there is no consensus. The entire distributed network is split into thinking differently, and that would cause it into a failure. So ये जो fault tolerance है, इसको आप you can just study. Oh, sorry. Taking this. जी वो थी, मैं एक और चीज़ इन्हें दिखाना चाह रहा हूँ. Before I do that, there is this, if you want to just play with the blockchain, there is a demo. It's a blockchain demo.io. ठीक है, ये बिल्कुल अभी हम will come back to the Byzantine fault tolerance. So इसमें आप you can just put your transactions here, add more peers. ठीक है ना, so you can add more peers, जितने भी peers add करने हैं, so you can do that. There is a genesis block where the previous hash is 0. and here you can put your transactions. ठीक है, Genesis block में नहीं, either once you have the add new block. Okay, so you can add new block, and in new block it is pointing to the hash of the previous block, and ये the previous block का hash ये है, ठीक है, 00C78, and here you can put your transaction. Yeah, so similarly you can just and in the transaction you have कि किस पेयर से किस पेयर के ऊपर जा रहा है ना, remember that. So एक इन्होंने simple सा एक वो बनाया हुआ है where you can at least see के किस तरह से blockchain के blocks बनते हैं and how they are pointing to the hash of the previous block. So coming to what we are studying. So हम ये कह रहे थे कि Byzantine, let me go back to the slide. So this is the Byzantine general problem, which is a problem in distributed computing, and all distributed computing systems protocol must handle this. They must be fault tolerant to Byzantine general problem, where though the distributed network should act in synchronization, but because of some malicious actors, there is no consensus, and there is no way for the nodes to reach to this consensus. So all usually we call this BFT. So the algorithm to handle this, so there are many algorithms. So why I am discussing this, because once we start studying the permissioned blockchain, every permissioned blockchain has solved this problem. Okay? Byzantine general problem is solved by every permissioned blockchain and every permissionless blockchain as well. Okay? But permissionless blockchain has solved this problem with the proof of work, okay, or proof of stake, so that everyone in the network has a consensus, whereas the permissioned blockchain, they have solved it in a very different way. Okay? They are not doing proof of work. Okay, so वो हम देखेंगे कि how there are different ways, and usually they are pluggable consensus protocols, especially in Hyperledger Fabric. So you can plug in this particular way of handling the Byzantine general problem, or this is how you are making it Byzantine fault tolerant. So there are ways, and we will study some of those ways, and it is up to you that which one you want to select, but usually you can find out कि these are the two important things. Remember कि ये एक important चीज़ है कि Byzantine fault tolerant किस तरह से आप achieve कर रहे हैं. See, so this is a very integral part of so you can read through these. I've just added this text. So as it's needs to be resilient in maximally uncertain environment. Nodes and messages can be good or bad with any frequency. So you can still imagine that there may be some bad actors. Changes without warning, often considered strictly security criteria, and distributed system for this reason would be easier if there are assumptions. Most consensus algorithms used in blockchain technology are Byzantine fault tolerant. They got to be Byzantine fault tolerant. ठीक है? So जिस तरह से हमने देखा कि most algorithms are either proof of work or proof of stake, जो कि permissionless blockchain के अंदर है. और so why they would not be proof of work? Because of the two reasons. Proof of work is slow, it is very computationally intensive, and so if there are compromises, it is because of the speeds that they want to speed up the whole thing, or so they compromise speed versus security, because it would not scale otherwise. If they want to scale it, it would not scale. So they increases the block size. So they say if you're increasing the block size, proof of work becomes more difficult. Proof of work more difficult means that it may take more time for a block to be generated. So they are always fighting with this trade-offs. इसको मैं सिर्फ छोड़ दूंगा. ये मैंने प्रूफ ऑफ वर्क और प्रूफ ऑफ स्टेक मैंने आपको थोड़ा सा बता दिया, बट वी विल कम बैक टू दिस. ठीक है. So I've added these slides, but I'll come back to this once we will study in detail the permission blockchain, which is hyperledger fabric. And ये हमने पिछली दफ़ा slides कुछ देख ली थी कि it is a project of Linux Foundation, started in 2015, or it is a permission blockchain. So members of the Hyperledger Fabric network enroll through a trusted membership service provider, MSP. So that is the provider who basically enroll करता है trusted members को. So it has the enrollment. So MSP would have a list of all K students, for example. This node would have list of all K students, and it will able to read the digital identity. I'll read the identity, and then I'll check whether you are enrolled in this list or not. If you are in this list, it will let you allow to do this. So MSP एक जो trusted permission blockchain में एक important element है. That's why there will be more complexity, because there are different nodes which are doing different functions. Because it is permission, it will check whether you have permission or not to be part of a specific channel or not. So MSP is important. So channels हैं, you can group a network or you can partition a network into different channels. If you want a privacy, that things happening here must not be known to these people. Okay, though they are part of just one blockchain. So you create different channels, so different subgroups. You partition the network into subgroups, and you create channels, allowing group of participants to create a ledger. So the peers on one channel would have one ledger, and peers on another channel would have another ledger. But you as a peer can be part of two channels. If you're part of two channels or part of three channels, then you have a copy of all the ledgers, like ledger 1, ledger 2. तो ये channels का इसमें वो है. फिर इसमें एक और which is different from the permissionless blockchain is the concept of world state. ठीक है. In other blockchains, the permissionless blockchains, you have only transaction log. You collect all the transaction, put it in a block, and you put it there. So we have seen this in case of UTXOs always, that you need to do a lot of work. So you have UTXOs, you say, okay, you collect them, and or you need to trace through the transactions to find out what is happening. But here, to make life easier for the programmers, they have this concept of world state. And this is the most updated state of an asset. And remember, I told you what an asset is in this, because there is no cryptocurrency, there are assets. Assets are that where the possession of assets are changing, that is a transaction. And remember our first lecture, we talked about if a possession, ownership is changing, so there is a transaction. So possession of an asset changes, it becomes a transaction. Okay? So the world state is the most updated state of that asset. And if it is a student, so whatever are different attributes, so उसके किसी भी attribute में change जो है वो एक हमारा world state होती है. So each participant has a copy of the ledger to every hyperledger fabric network they belong to. ये हमने सीख लिया था. The state of the ledger at a given point in time is called the world state. It's a database. और ये लेवल DB की वैल्यू स्टोर डेटाबेस होती है. एक की होती है और एक उसकी वैल्यू होती है. So we'll see today another example. So इनके जो स्मार्ट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट हैं, so though they are using this name smart contract, it is just a program which is invoked by a client to make a transaction. ठीक है. This has the rules that how that transaction will happen. So it is just a piece of code, and so this is called a smart contract, but Hyperledger has given it a special name, a chain code. Okay? It is basically creating that chain of blocks. It's called a chain code. They are invoked by an application external to the blockchain. Usually a client application, if you are students, you have an app, and that app basically can invoke a blockchain, which, let's say a case has a blockchain network where there are peers, like in my example was registrar or HOD, and these are the peers, and you as a student, you are not part of the blockchain network, okay, but you can invoke a contract for making a transaction. You may be an asset, but you are not part of the blockchain. You don't have copy of the ledger, copy of the results of every student, for example. And you need not to have actually a copy of the ledger. That's why you are not part of the blockchain. Those who needs to have a copy of the ledger, they are only part of the blockchain. You only invoke a transaction. So when that application needs to interact with the ledger, you can put a query, and only if that query is allowed. Maybe you can have a query about yourself. Right? So chain code is written in Java, in JavaScript, and in Golang or Go, which is a C++ like language. It ensures privacy. It ensures consensus. Transaction must be written to the ledger in the order in which they occur, so that there is no fork. So transaction, they put the transactions in order to make a block, and that the block is in order. So there is an orderer service to ensure that it does not create, the network does not create a fork. वो ये ensure करता है कि a network must not create a fork. और वो कौन करता है? ये जो O होता है ना, orderer service. ये O है, इसकी responsibility है. अभी हम देखेंगे कैसे. It is his responsibility to ensure कि जितनी transactions हैं वो fork में नहीं जा रही हैं. तो ये सारे endorsements एक application होती है. It application primarily invoke a smart contract. Okay? And then there are peers, those are endorsing node. They check whether the transactions are valid or not, and then they go back to the application and says, yes, this transaction is valid. Then the transaction happens. It is endorsed by multiple people, and then you have an endorsement policy, a voting policy. Like if it is endorsed by 3 nodes out of 4, you say, okay, it is valid. If it is endorsed by, you say, any one of the 4, it is up to you. Once you are defining, you say it may be endorsed by or operation, like any of the 4, it is okay. If you say no, it must be endorsed by everybody, and all the 4 A, B, C, D, F, all the peers must endorse it, the endorsing peer. So they are endorsing peers, and they will say whether a transaction is a valid transaction or not. Okay? For example, if a course registration है, accounts वाले के पास गए, उसने कहा पैसे नहीं दिए इसने अभी, ठीक है? इसने कहा हाँ हमारे हिसाब से इसने prerequisite किए हुए हैं, हमारे हिसाब से इसका GPS हो. So they are different endorser, and then you say if A, if not A, then you don't endorse. Okay, so that transaction will not go forward because you say कि भाई आपका ये वाला missing है. So depending upon the conditions, every endorser would check and then give its willingness, and then you have a rule which says okay, किस तरह का relationship है जबकि endorse हो जाएगी. Once a transaction is endorsed, it says yes, it is a valid transaction. Okay, then it goes to the orderer, and orderer would just then, if the multiple transactions from different students coming, and even for the same students coming, and you first say I want to take this course, then say no, I don't want to take this course, I want to take this course. Then say no, I don't want to take this course, I want to. So you are basically changing transaction. It is important. Every transaction will be logged, but it'll make sure that they are in order, so that the most valid transaction is placed in the last. So because that will change the world state. Okay? So the order will make sure that transactions are in order, so that they are not out of order. So because transaction is changing the ownership. If transaction is changing the ownership, you got to make sure the most updated transaction is the last transaction. So it ensures that they are placed in order. And remember, usually this is a network, and there are many research publications which are only focusing on that the delay profile, that how the queuing theory, they're putting, like there are many clients which are just bombarding this network with their requests. And so how the queuing theory would work, किस तरह से आएंगी, what are the delays, what are the chances of some transaction not to be even part of the queue. So queue size itna hai, and every transaction would take some time because of the way this whole thing works. So how many transactions will be dropped, what should be the queue size. So a lot of research is happening in just checking the performance of a network like this. See? So there are client applications which, if in this case, everybody almost who wants to interact with this with a contract, smart contract would go through an application. Okay? If somebody wants to buy a car, so he say, okay, I want to buy a car, I'll show you an application. If you're a patient, if somebody wants to be registered in a hospital, he will have an application, he'll download an application. And usually every application or every node would have a digital identity. So they have to tell the MSP, yes, I am an authorized, node in this network. So they got to have an identity, and they thought that it's better that just you have a CA, and identity is an X.509 certificate. For every peer there is a 509 certificate, because if as a peer you are signing something, right? This is a transcript. If a HOD is signing or a dean is signing, so he needs to have his public-private certificate, which says, okay, this is who I am, and I'm signing it. Okay? So once a transaction is happening, so all the relevant parties got to sign that transaction. There may be 2 or 3 or 4. So all the relevant parties got to, so that the smart contract would require the relevant parties to sign the transaction. So you can have, this is the network configurations, this is the orderer, this is the channel, and the channel has multiple peers. ठीक है, जैसा से peer है, ये a consortium has, so there are the consortiums. CC1 is the configuration control of consortium 1. So you have this 2 organization, R1 and R2, part of this consortium. As in my example, I told you that consider R1 as case, R2 as fast, R3 as NUST. So we basically, to have better understanding of this, I gave you an example where I say R1 is case, R2 is fast, R2 is fast, R3 is NUST. Okay, and then I says these are the peers, and peers may be dean office, controller, examiner, right? And so there is a ledger, a smart contract, and whereas channel 2 you have different peers, you have this P2 is a peer which is part of the both networks. So he's somebody from the fast, because he's somebody from the fast, he is dealing with a contract which is with case, and he is also dealing with a contract which is with NUST. So he has two smart contracts he is executing, S5, S6. So any student who is case fast would be invoking S5 contract, any student who is fastness would be invoking S6. So his application will be invoking S6 contract. So this is a peer, he is part of the both networks, and so he has a copy of 2 ledgers. One ledger is a copy of the ledger where the students from case and fast are taking courses, interchangeably courses, and then there is another copy of the ledger which is doing this. Right? So this ordering service is basically ensuring that there should not be a fork which get formed. All transactions must in order be placed in the ledger. So this is the responsibility of this. And CAs, the CAs are responsible to issue certificates to different entities. Why there are so many CAs? Because every organization has its own CA. So CA1 usko de raha hai, CA2 kisi ko de raha hai. So that's how it is happening. So we have already gone through this. R1, R2, R3, R4 are the 4 organizations jointly. I'll be covering another example today. तो वो अपना उनका कोई एग्रीमेंट लिखा हुआ है, एंड यू आर इम्प्लीमेंटिंग इन हाइपर लेजर फैब्रिक. R4 हैज़ बीन असाइंड टू द नेटवर्क इनिशिएटर. यहाँ हमने मैपिंग कर ली थी केस फास्टनेस HEC के ऊपर. और देन वी हैव दिस इन डिटेल. इफ़ यू जस्ट गो थ्रू दिस एग्जाम्पल, and especially the assignment I gave you and the assignment which we discussed today from HEC, that they want a degree verification system, and I think you can very easily craft, at least design a blockchain network. उसमें CAs किधर से आएंगे, जैसा मैं शुरू में डिस्कस कर रहा था. So this is coming from a document. It's about 500 pages document on Hyperledger Fabric 2.0 का एक डॉक्यूमेंट है. उसमें उन्होंने इसको डिस्कस किया हुआ है. देन दे हैव अ ट्यूटोरियल, देन दे हैव एन एग्जांपल एज वेल. तो ये मैं इसको हमने so this is how it like हमने कहा कि जी सबसे पहले जो है वो R4 is HEC. So HEC creates a network. Even once what we are discussing today कि वो HEC ने degree verification करनी है, तो HEC creates this blockchain network almost like this. And HEC has an ordering service. HEC का system admin will configure. This is the network configuration for organization 4. So he's a system admin. He set up the network where then ultimately all universities will become part of this blockchain network. And he has this CA4 as well, which is a certification authority for the HEC organization, where this O4 has gotten its identity from CA4. ठीक है? और उसके बाद ये जिस तरह से network is formed when an orderer is started. Network and the ordering service comprising a single node O4 is configured according to a network configuration NC4, which gives administrative rights to organization R4. At the network level, certificate authority CA4 is used to dispense identities to the administrator and network nodes of the other. जितने लोग हैं, orderer है, network administrator है, so everybody is getting its identity from CA4. R4 organization, every entity in R4 organization is being certified by its own CA, which is CA4. Yeah. So O4 is initially configured and started by an administrator in organization R4 and hosted in R4. उसी R4 की के HEC के अंदर ही ये इंस्टॉल हुआ हुआ है. The configuration NC4 contains the policies that describe the starting set of administrative capabilities for the network. वो system administration का सारा वो NC4 के अंदर है. और इस तरह से this is how the client application, so they have a software development kit. It comes with a hyperledger fabric, a software development kit which basically creates that you can create an application with a nice user interfaces and which will interact with the smart contract. ठीक है? और smart contract would make a transaction in the ledger and also change the world state. So ledger has two parts. It is a blockchain, which is the chain of blocks, and a world state. So ledger has two parts. These are the two parts. ठीक है? तो ये सारा ये करता है. और so these are the block, precisely the same. आपके जिस तरह blockchain में होता है, previous hash को point कर रहे हैं और world state we know what the world state is. ठीक है? जिस तरह key value pair का मैंने आपको बताया था. The key value pair is primarily for every asset you will have attributes. For a student you will have his name, his age. ठीक है ना? So different attributes. If it is a car, so you have color, price, honor, type, this, that. So those are the attributes. So आप key value pair इसी तरह होता है कि gender, color. So these are constant and these are changing according to the asset. ठीक है? If there is any change in a key, a transaction will happen. Key pair में कोई change होगी, a transaction will happen. A color change हो रहा है, price change हो रही है, so a transaction will happen. ठीक है? तो इस तरह से world state create होगी. और इसमें हम so world state हमने देख लिया. So this is all coming from the last time. So we did this. अच्छा, what today I want to cover is this. This is an interesting example which will make you help understand that how this whole thing works. So there is going to be an application. वो Angular JS किसी ने किसी भी चीज़ में की हुई है. ठीक है? So there is an application which has a nice user interface. And so this application is where somebody wants to order for a new car. ठीक है? और उसमें उस blockchain में ये लोग players हैं. So I've seen like many applications. This is just one, and I was amazed to see कि बहुत सारी like they mostly Indian companies. They are developing many solutions for UAE. So yesterday I was seeing their जो लैंड रिकॉर्ड है वो किसी इंडियन कंपनी ने किया यूएई का सारा जो ट्रांसफ़र हो रही हैं और वो सारी ब्लॉकचेन के ऊपर है और हाइपरलेजर फैब्रिक यूज़ किया हुआ है उन्होंने. सो एंड मोस्टली यू विल फाइंड के ज़्यादातर ये इंडियंस ही हैं इसमें बहुत ज़्यादा जो कि दे रियली नो अ लॉट अबाउट द ब्लॉकचेन एंड टेक्नोलॉजी एंड द गुड प्रोग्रामर्स एज वेल. अब इसमें ये लोग हैं, एक है कोई एजेंसी, व्हीकल स्टैंडर्ड्स की कोई एजेंसी है, ही इज अ स्टेक होल्डर इन दिस. देयर इज अ बायर who wants to buy a car, or he'll become an owner ultimately. There is this employee who is dealing with the logistic. There is this guy insurer that who would be insuring a car, and there is the police who may be just checking कि भी valid documentation है कि नहीं है, and there is this regulator or administrator. ठीक है? So different players in this network. So he has a mobile application, and everybody has a mobile application almost. So that is how they interact with this blockchain. Okay? So they have maybe a mobile application or web-based application for interacting, invoking the smart contract. So he has a mobile application, and similarly, this is the guy who may have like IoTs जो कि उसको status दे रहे हैं कि where is the current status of the car is, because he's looking after the logistic. He may also have an ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning tool, which basically is making sure कि सारा जो raw material जगहों पे आ रहा है, हर चीज़ in place. और enterprise integration tools हैं, which are integrating IoTs with ERP with blockchain. ठीक है, सारी चीज़ें ये independently सारी एक cohesive integrate होके part of the network चल रही हैं. और ये जो है ये business rules इसके पास हैं, और analytics चल रही है. अब ये जो बंदा है, let's say he downloads this application and he wants to build his own car, and that's what they are providing. They say you just build your own car. So once you are ordering a car, so you just download an application, tell us कि कौन सी type की गाड़ी चाहिए, उसका रंग क्या हो. So there are different options. So he is selecting कि whether he wants a standard car or he wants an executive car. If it is a standard car, they are not adding any into that, but if it is a executive car, they are adding 450 pounds into the price of the car, and then you can choose the color and the interior and the extras, and then you place an order. Okay, so this is, you know, the software is saying, okay, which color do you want, so you select a color. So which interior do you want, so you select an interior, and then what extra do you want. Okay, so you want a warranty extra, you want tinted windows, so you just tick, and for something you have to pay extra, like for extended warranty you have to pay 150 pound more, and then for tinted windows you pay more, and then you say okay, my order is complete. देखें जो complete होता जाएगा वही होता जाएगा. So you say okay, it is complete, and you are assigned a number, and you have order received, this is the time, and manufacturing has not happened yet. Okay? And now it goes to the blockchain net, invoked the blockchain network. Obviously the payment ये वो सारी वो उसको check करेगा. ये blockchain का network है where there are different orders. So there are different orders. I think Irium is the company, and there are perhaps different types of cars. Okay, and they are, here is the order where ये complete हो चुका है, manufacturing ये complete हो चुका है, this is just order is received. Okay, so an order, different orders received, they are getting as a different transaction into your blockchain. इसने अब ये chassis और vehicle identification number, owner assign, interior paint शेंट सारा हो गया है, delivery हो गई है या हो रही है. So same is the case here. इधर order जो है, so ये अपने डैशबोर्ड में प्रोडक्शन को देख रहा है कि the orders which are completed and the orders which are just received. Okay? और फिर ये उसी तरह से ट्रांजैक्शन है, starting from 165 to 66 to 67. So these are the different the blocks and the transaction IDs. और यहाँ पे प्लेस ऑर्डर हो रहा है, ये डिलीवर्ड हो चुका है, ये ओनर भी इसका साइन हो गया है, here the vehicle identification number assigned. So these are the states. ठीक है, so these are the different, and you can see the transaction IDs, transaction type क्या है, और transaction submitter क्या है. So all the front ends of the software which is giving you information about what is happening in the network. ठीक है, ये हमने पहले से देख लिया, ये रिपीट हो रही है. So this is build your car, and you also have the visibility. The good thing about this is that in your application you have visibility कि मेरी गाड़ी अभी मैन्युफैक्चर हो गई है, उसका व्हीकल आइडेंटिफिकेशन नंबर लग गया है, उसकी अभी चेसी पड़ी है. So because you can have as a customer you have precise visibility into what is the status of manufacturing of your car. ठीक है? So because this all information is coming through IoTs, through ERPs, so it is also pushed to you so that you know. So इसी तरह से there are many other applications like पूरा HMIS जो Hospital Management Information System, ठीक है? They have created using Hyperledger Fabric. So अगर आप सोचेंगे तो तकरीबन हर चीज़ ये कर लेता है, ठीक है ना? So mostly it will able to do most of the things. के there are like ये वो MSP है which will this membership service provider है where if all the people who are authorized users are to be registered with an MSP. There are different peers हैं. ये laboratory, so this is a local MSP of the same hospital. ये लेबॉरेटरी का MSP है, इसके peers हैं. ये लेबॉरेटरी का क्लाइंट एप्लीकेशन होंगी where you are just inputting data to invoke a smart contract. इसी तरह से ये फार्मेसी जो क्लाइंट है, the client primarily is the one who has an interface and who just input something and then he can invoke a smart contract which is running with peer 0, peer 0, peer 1. So in peer से. So insurance provider का MSP है. सो इंश्योरेंस प्रोवाइडर का क्लाइंट की एप्लीकेशन चल रही है, फार्मेसी है उसके क्लाइंट की एप्लीकेशन चल रही है. सो इन अ हेल्थ केयर नेटवर्क यू हैव डिफरेंट स्टेक होल्डर्स एंड दे मे बी ऑन द सेम चैनल. ठीक है, मे बी ऑन द सेम चैनल बिकॉज पेशेंट आया, सीन बाय द डॉक्टर, टेस्ट हुए एंड ही हैज़ टू बाय द मेडिसिन and the insurance has to repay or the insurance is to be charged. So you just make, and then you see the ordering service is the central. Ordering service is central to every network because all the transactions after they are endorsed will come to the ordering service. और ये फिर सबको दोबारा से broadcast करेगा. So the ledger जो होंगे इन सबके पास, everybody would have a copy of the ledger and their copy will be made on the ledger. The same about a patient seen by the doctor, ये टेस्ट थे उसके, ये उसको दवाइयाँ दी गई, and insurance would have the visibility. ठीक है, so this is how the healthcare network would work. ये उसका जैसे कि एक इंटरफेस है उसको हेल्थ केयर फैब्रिक के नाम से कि you are basically logging into the system, maybe as a doctor, maybe as a pharmacist, maybe as a patient, so it depends. So whosoever your identity is, in a specific way you will invoke a smart contract which will make changes in the ledger. Okay, you Fabric Healthcare, select your organization, so you are, let's say, an employee in the organization. So ये सारी चीज़ें आप देखिएगा कि channel is important, a peer is important, peer may be from different organization, and orderer is important. बैकएंड एप्लीकेशन जो है वो सारी Node.js वगैरह में चलती है, Golang में चलती है, अनऑफिशियल Python में भी चलती है, बट मोस्टली ये हैं. और फ्रंट एंड आपकी मर्जी है, यू कैन हैव एन एंगुलर view.js, so you can have any जो फ्रंट एंड जो आपने बनाना है, you can just have any technology because it's not part of the blockchain, it only is an interface which invokes a blockchain network. तो इसमें आपने Linux के ऊपर कुछ चीज़ें जो कि विच विल हेल्प यू आउट, लाइक jQuery वगैरह हैं. फिर डॉकर्स, हमें डोंट नीड टू गेट इनटू द टेक्नोलॉजी एट दिस पॉइंट, बट डॉकर क्या करता है, एक ही मशीन पे मल्टीपल मशीन्स, वर्चुअल मशीन्स आप चला सकते हैं, डॉकर कंटेनर्स. बिकॉज लेट्स से आप peer 0 भी उस पर चला रहे हैं, peer 1 भी उस पर चला रहे हैं, MSP भी उस पर चला रहे हैं. सो यू कैन हैव ऑन द सेम मशीन रनिंग डिफरेंट nodes of the network, because especially जब आप testing करें, you don't want to have 6 computers to make a network. You can just run 6 of them on the same machine. ठीक है, तो ये Docker images के हर एक के ऊपर कौन कौन सा कोड जाना है, उसकी बाइनरीज और सैम्पल, इस तरह की चीज़ें हैं. ओके, तो ये उसको चेन कोड. अब चेन कोड है कि वो क्या क्या चीज़ें कर सकता है. ठीक है, मतलब आप क्यूरी कर सकते हैं, आप गेट ऑल एसेट्स कर सकते हैं, आप रीड एसेट्स कर सकते हैं. व्हाट यू कैन इन्वोक, you create कर सकते हैं एक asset को, you can update an asset as a smart contract, you can transfer an asset as a smart contract, or you can delete an asset as a smart contract. This is your chain code. ठीक है, इस simple सी example है जो कि है asset transfer basic, के एक asset create करके you can transfer it to somebody else. तो वो आपकी कुछ जो आपकी world स्टेट है उसकी क्यूरीज की प्रोविजन देता है कि व्हाट क्यूरीज यू कैन रन बिकॉज ए डेटाबेस, व्हाट क्यूरीज यू कैन रन ऑन द डेटाबेस। ये स्मार्ट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट के थ्रू आपने अगर इफ यू इवन आर अ क्लाइंट एंड यू वांट टू रन अ क्यूरी, सो देयर विल बी प्रोविजन। सो कौन लेजर के साथ कर रहा है? स्मार्ट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, ठीक है। सो स्मार्ट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट हैज टू पावर्स, वन इज डिफरेंट टाइप ऑफ क्यूरीज दैट इट कैन रन in the ledger, and then how you intend to invoke as a client, how do you intend to invoke a smart contract to make changes, to make a transaction. So what are those transactions? These are the transactions. Okay, you can creating an asset, you are updating an asset, you are transferring an asset, and you are deleting an asset. So these are the different transactions that you make, and the queries and the transaction. ठीक है, तो ये दोनों अहम चीजें हैं। और ये ऑर्डर है जो कि हम बार बार इसको देखते रहेंगे, which is very central to this whole network, और चैनल है जिसके ऊपर के आप ये कह लें कि दे आर कनेक्टेड टू अ चैनल। अब द ऑर्डरिंग सर्विस जो है वो प्राइमरीली क्या करती है? मैनी डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड ब्लॉकचेन, ये हमने देख लिया, दैट्स व्हाई आई स्टार्टेड विद द फोर्क्स, कि मैनी डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड ब्लॉकचेन सच एज इथेरियम, बिटकॉइन आर नॉट परमिशन ब्लॉकचेन. Any node can participate in the consensus process for ordering and building the transactions into the blocks. These systems rely on probabilistic consensus algorithm, so there is a vulnerable to divergent ledgers, also known as fork. ये हमने आज सारा देख लिया। कोई probabilistic हैं वो जिस तरह से वो blocks बन रहे हैं, हर एक independently बना रहा है, so they may result into forks. तो जो ordering service है primarily, उसका काम ये है कि वो इट विल नॉट लेट दिस हैपन इन अ परमिशन ब्लॉकचेन, ठीक है। दिस इज द मेन पर्पस ऑफ द ऑर्डरिंग सर्विस। अब इसने एक बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग सी एग्जांपल इसने उस डॉक्यूमेंट में की हुई है दैट विल हेल्प अस टू अंडरस्टैंड इट इवन मोर। अब वो ही कहते हैं, पहले हम इसको देख लेते हैं सिनेरियो क्या। उसने कहा कि ये अप्रैल 2020 Magneto Corp won a large order to manufacture 10,000 Model D cars for Dentry. किसी ने एक मैन्युफैक्चरर को कहा कि manufacture 10,000 cars for me. Okay, so it's a big order, and this Magneto Corporation does not have enough funding to basically manufacture all these cars because they have to hire more people, they have to order for the raw material. So, but it's a big order and they want to basically execute on this. So, Daintree will not have to pay for the vehicle until they start to be delivered on November 1. So, there are 6 months. अप्रैल में उन्हें ऑर्डर मिला है, नवंबर तक जो है उसने किसी तरह से जो मैग्नेटो कॉर्पोरेशन है, it has to finance the project, but it does not have enough funds because it'll start getting paid in November once it delivers the first batch of the cars. अब ये क्या करते हैं? ये कहते हैं कि अच्छा मैं ना because I have this big order and I can show everybody this order, and so it issues जिस तरह हमारे surety bonds होते हैं, so it has a surety bond. It says कि जी for 6 months let's say कि कहते हैं मुझे $5 million चाहिए, around $4 point some million to meet expense of every month. So this is April, ठीक है। अब ये प्लानिंग करें, अप्रैल, मई, जून, जुलाई, अगस्त, सितंबर, अक्टूबर, नवंबर, ठीक है। सो दे आर प्लानिंग दैट इट्स ऑलरेडी अप्रैल, लेट्स से अप्रैल, मई में वो इसको शुरू करते हैं। सो एंड ऑफ मई ही हैज टू पे, और एंड ऑफ अप्रैल ही हैज टू पे, और ही नीड्स $5 million, then $5 million, then $5 million, 4 point something million dollars. तो ये एक हर महीने के शुरू में it issues a surety bond, which it is calling it a paper. Its face value is $5 million. Its maturity is, then when it is redeemed, its maturity is के नवंबर में ये mature हो जाएगा, $5 million जो भी करेगा $5 million मिलेंगे। अब these are the investors. Digi Bank is an investor, Big Fund is an investor, Hedge Metric is an investor, Broker House is an investor. So these are all investors who, if they put some money in the bank, they only get, let's say, 2%. And now they negotiate, they may get even more. So they know there is a surety bond, it'll get, and it's ये जो company है, ये reliable company है, so they can earn more profit by buying a surety bond with face value of $5 million, and they can trade that. लेट्स से दे डोंट हैव टू वेट फॉर 6 months, वो खरीदा किसी और को बेच दिया, थोड़ा सा अपना प्रॉफिट उठाया उस पर, किसी और को बेच दिया, सो दे मेक अ लिटिल प्रॉफिट, okay, and then they sell it to anybody, so they can resell, so it can just be sold again and again and again, and whosoever has the last owner, he go and redeem it and get a $5 million, so everybody is making a little profit on it. ठीक है, जिसने अगर किसने होल्ड करना है पूरे 6 month के लिए, 6 month के लिए कर लेगा, वरना a person buys it, makes a little profit, sell it to somebody, buys it, sell it to somebody, and every month they are coming up with a bond like this. So all these people who want to make more money than what a bank pays, so it's a very secure investment. ठीक है, ये बहुत secure investment है जहाँ पे वो उसको invest कर रहे हैं और अपने पैसे बना रहे हैं. So magnetocore issues this bond or a paper and also redeem. ठीक है, after 6 months ये $5 million जो है जिसकी लास्ट ओनरशिप होगी, he will get the $5 million. ठीक है, so they usually get less than, once they sell it they get less than $5 million, maybe face value 4.5, 4.6, 4.8 depending upon that how good a deal they can make, so they sell it. अब ये जो डिजिटल बैंक है, it can buy and sell. ठीक है, इसने इसको खरीदा, बेच दिया, और हो सकता है कि इट कीप्स इट फॉर 6 months एंड फाइनली ये रिडीम करे, कि ही बेसिकली गेट्स हिज मनी बिकॉज ही हैज दिए. और सिमिलरली ये बिग फंड है, ये भी सारा ये कर सकता है. सो दीज आर ऑल दी प्लेयर्स, एंड जो रेट एम है, इट इज जस्ट पुटिंग अ रिस्क रेटिंग ऑन टू दिस इन्वेस्टमेंट, वेदर इट्स अ गुड इन्वेस्टमेंट और बैड इन्वेस्टमेंट. सो इट्स जस्ट रेटिंग दैट. So now if we want to do this on a blockchain network, and as we can see, it is a permissioned blockchain built for a specific purpose, that the people should have an application where they can buy a surety bond, and its ownership has to change on this blockchain network. अब वो जो एक surety bond with some ID, अब 6 इशू होंगे ना, पहले एक इशू होगा, अगले महीने एक और इशू होगा, अगले महीने एक और इशू होगा. तो हर जो श्योरिटी बॉन्ड है उसकी क्या चीज चेंज हो रही है? द प्राइस इज चेंजिंग बिकॉज पीपल आर बाइंग एंड सेलिंग. दे मे बी सेलिंग इट एट अ लोअर रेट एज वेल, कि वो कई रेटिंग खराब होगी, दे हैव टू सेल इट, कि नहीं, दे डोंट वांट टू टेक दिस रिस्क ऑफ कीपिंग इट फॉर 6 months. इससे अच्छा थोड़ा सा लॉस लेके भी मैं इसको निकाल देता हूँ. इट डिपेंड्स. सो in this example we want to do this on a hyperledger fabric, a blockchain network. So there is a ledger, there is a world state, and these are the people who are part of the network, and there is a smart contract which is governing all of this. सही. तो ये है 6 organization who use PaperNet to issue, buy and redeem commercial bonds. Magnetocore issues and redeems the commercial paper, and ये सारे जो हैं हमारे, ये all trade commercial paper with each other, और RateM provides various measure of risk for commercial paper. ठीक है. अच्छा जी, ये हमने देख लिया. अब ये this is kind of a commercial paper, the information that goes in a commercial paper, and this is also tell you the जो key value pair क्या होंगे. एक issuer कौन है उसका? In this case issuer is this. उसका कोई ID होगा, ये पहला पेपर है. Then the owner कौन है इसका? Magnetocore है. Issue date is 31st May 2020. Maturity is on 30th November 2020. Okay, and face value, once you redeem, face value is once you redeem you get $5 million, and current status just issued. So they have issued it, and now people would bid and buy this. Okay, अब ये issue है. Shortly after issuance, the paper is bought by DigiBank. DigiBank कहता है I want to buy this paper for some value. So इसका current state हो जाएगा trading. Face value is still the same. ठीक है. Rest now ownership will change. Ownership will go to DigiBank. Issuer is still the Magnetocore, but the owner is now the DigiBank, and so there is a transaction. A transaction will happen. The world state will change. Okay. So then is redeeming. Let's say कि finally it will get redeemed, and once it is redeemed, let's say ownership is with Magnetocore, or it could be with anybody, और इसके ऊपर ये redeem हो जाएगा, और यहाँ से इसका end हो जाएगा life cycle का. So you want to make it in terms of transaction. So you say first transaction is an issue transaction. Type of the transaction is an issue transaction. Rest of the information are always same, but you also put a timestamp that when it is issued. The timestamp के जी ये 9 PM के ऊपर इट वाज इशूड ऑन अ ब्लॉकचेन नेटवर्क, और फिर जो है इट इज बॉट बाय डिजी बैंक विद द प्राइस ऑफ 4.94 मिलियन US डॉलर्स, और उसने इसको 31 मई को 10 बजे उसने इसको परचेज किया. तो विद दिस परचेज टाइम, प्राइस, न्यू ऑनर और करंट ऑनर ये था, ये उसका आईडी है और ये इशूअर था, और दिस ट्रांजैक्शन इज अ बाय ट्रांजैक्शन. सो इट बायस एंड दिस चेंजेस. ओके, so it may like be bought by somebody else from digibank to big fund. So you make all these transactions. A buy transaction demands that both the seller and the buyer they need to sign it. ठीक है, तो डिजिटल सिग्नेचर दोनों assert करेंगे उस ट्रांजेक्शन पे, because these are the two entities, so they put their signature and then it goes into a transaction. So this is why, because there has to be a proof of mutual agreement among the two parties, they're part of the deal. So redeem transaction इस तरह की होगी. लेट्स से आखिर में ऑनर है हेज मैट्रिक, तो ये 30 नवंबर को इतने बजे ये रिडीम होगी ट्रांजैक्शन. So the ledger जो है वो required sign offs on transactions are enforced through rules which are evaluated using a pending a transaction ledger. So anybody who wants to pend a transaction needs to make sure the system will ensure कि जो right signatures हैं जिन जिन लोगों के होने हैं वो हर transaction के ऊपर हुए हुए हैं. ठीक है, so there are world state and the transaction. So this is the life cycle. A bond is issued, then it is bought, and it just keep trading. So these are the transactions: issued, trading, and finally it is redeemed. So this is the life cycle. इस तरह से हमने लेजर की स्टेट देख ली, और उसकी जो है ये. So this is how the transactions are happening. Issue transaction ये है, ये ब्लॉक में लग जाएगी जाके. ट्रेडिंग ट्रांजैक्शन ये है, ये जाके उसमें लग जाएगी आपके, और रीडीम ट्रांजैक्शन ये है. एंड इस ऑर्डर इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. ठीक है, बिकॉज अगर आपने ऑर्डर सही नहीं रखेंगे तो ये जो है इस तरह से इसकी ट्रांजैक्शंस हो रही हैं. जो स्टेट कीज हैं, स्टेट कीज का मैंने आपको बताया था कि ये वो प्रॉपर्टीज हैं जो कि आपके बस आई थिंक आई विल टेक 2 more minutes and then we'll just keep doing this in the next class. तो ये उसका मैं सिर्फ आपको ये दिखा दूं, ये देखें, की इज दिस. ठीक है, ये आईडी है. सो एवरी श्योरिटी बॉन्ड हैज अ यूनिक आईडी. ठीक है, सो ये उन्होंने org.paper.01020303 ये उसकी स्टेट्स हैं. इशूअर कौन है? द करंट, द मोस्ट अपडेटेड स्टेट, ये वैल्यू है. सो दिस इज कॉल्ड द की वैल्यू पेयर. तो ये उसकी स्टेट है. इशूअर, पेपर की आईडी, ओनर कौन है, इशू डेट क्या है, करंट स्टेट क्या है, ट्रेडिंग पे चल रहा है, करंट स्टेट ट्रेडिंग, करंट स्टेट इशूड. सो ये एक है लेजर जिसमें ब्लॉकचेन है, वो आपने ट्रांजैक्शंस देख ली, और एक है वर्ल्ड स्टेट, वो ये है जिसके अंदर उसकी द मोस्ट अपडेटेड स्टेट ऑफ दिस पर्टिकुलर श्योरिटी बॉन्ड इज हियर. एंड द स्मार्ट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट कैन क्यूरी टू फाइंड आउट कि अच्छा ये पेपर इस वक्त किधर है. ठीक है, इट कैन क्यूरी इनटू दिस. And the smart contract can also change any of the status of the keys. Ownership उसकी change कर सकता है, उसकी face value, तो बहुत सारी चीज़ें तो fix रहेंगी, लेकिन जो उसकी price है उसको देख सकता है. तो this is how this works. So we'll come back inshallah and we'll continue learning about these. तो ये काफ़ी बड़ी details example है, और especially जब हम इसके ऊपर आएंगे कि how it happens on a hyperledger fabric. So कोई क्वेश्चन हो किसी का तो you can ask, and but हम इंशाल्लाह, मैं अभी सोच रहा हूँ कि आईडीज तो दे दें हम सबसे पहले ना. द फर्स्ट स्टेप इज दैट एवरी स्टूडेंट शुड हैव अ डिजिटल आईडी. वॉलेट्स, so we give you a wallets so that आपकी जो ट्रांसक्रिप्ट्स है ना वो आपके वॉलेट पे आना शुरू हो जाए. So slowly we shift to a totally blockchain. Case shifts to a blockchain. The first institute to completely run on blockchain. I think it can. तो हम कोशिश करेंगे. अभी हमने बनाया है केयर में ना, So we have actually made a digital wallet. बड़ा मजे का wallet है वो हमने भी, क्योंकि नादरा bonds के ना वो एक you can change your blockchain is coming, you know. Nadra wants you can apply for a digital wallet with your ID. ठीक है, you have an ID card, so you have this application. So our application, you go and download the application, you put your CNIC, but you may have to go to उनके kiosk पे जाना पड़ेगा because they will verify it is you. But CA is R. So you put your fingerprint, you put your CNIC number, they verify it is you. So we issue your digital certificate, and you get an ID जो कि आप किसी को दिखाएंगे तो उस पर QRS कोड होगा, वो स्कैन करेगा तो उस पर हमारी वेबसाइट पे जाएगा और वो वेरीफाई कर लेगा कि यस इट इज़ यू, और टाइम स्टैम्प भी है. वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग एप्लीकेशन. अब देखें अल्लाह करे हो जाए, मंडे को है इसकी वो बिड ओपनिंग. Somebody has proposed it and we also are contesting in it, and we have actually created all of this. और CA एस्टैब्लिश किया है, उसके यूज़र इंटरफेसेस बनाए हैं. It's interesting and important. It is happening in Pakistan. Just started happening in Pakistan. अब जिस तरह से एकदम से अगर let's say जैसे डिजिटल ID आ गया ना, then you can just imagine that all these applications which require your identification, ठीक है, वो सारी ब्लॉकचेन पे चली जाएंगी. चाहे लैंड ट्रांसफ़र है आपका, चाहे पासपोर्ट बनवाना है आपने, एनीथिंग दैट अल्टीमेटली ये जो है आपका एहसास का प्रोग्राम है आपका, यू नो. सो ऑल दीज थिंग एंड देन द डिजिटल करेंसी विल ऑल्सो कम इन टू प्ले बिकॉज दे वॉन्ट फॉर एहसास प्रोग्राम that people should be issued digital currency. It is state bank digital currency. So there is this concept of not the cryptocurrency, it is state bank digital currency, SBDC. So every state bank is trying to issue an SBDC. For us the best project is the एहसास program. इसमें बड़े घपले हैं, ठीक है. If you issue everybody a digital ID and you have this digital currency and you pass it to their wallet and they, और वो सिर्फ स्पेंड भी डिजिटल करेंसी में करेंगे, जिससे भी दाल खरीदनी है, चने खरीदने हैं, so they got to have a digital wallet too. So then you can trace that where they actually spending money. See? So you have the trace of the money that is going to people, from people to what they are doing with that money. Are they using it to buy groceries? Yes. जी. अच्छा अच्छा. यस. नहीं, उसमें क्या वो डिजिटल करेंसी होगी, एक्चुअल करेंसी होगी? ट्रांजैक्ट तो एक्चुअल होगी, लेकिन जो बंदा स्पेंड कर रहा है वो तो डिजिटल कर रहा है ना. लेकिन वो आपको रुपयों में तो नहीं देंगे ना, पैसे तो कहीं और से आएंगे ना आपको, मर्चेंट. ठीक है, ठीक है. अच्छा, ये मैं समझ गया, लेकिन मैं जो जिस चीज़ की बात कर रहा हूँ, आई एम जस्ट आई अंडरस्टूड. बैंक से किसके अकाउंट में क्रेडिट होगी? जो 1000 रुपया. अच्छा नहीं, मैं आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट डिफरेंट थिंग. ये तो अभी करंटली हो रहा है ना, ये कर रहे हैं. आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट द स्टेट बैंक इज वर्किंग ऑन दिस प्रोजेक्ट विच इज स्टेट बैंक डिजिटल करेंसी, जो कि आपके डिजिटल वॉलेट्स में आएगी एंड यू स्पेंड एज अ डिजिटल करेंसी. उसके पैसे नहीं है, ठीक है. सो आई गो फ्रॉम वॉलेट टू वॉलेट एज द क्रिप्टो करेंसी गोज. और उसका सबसे बड़ा जो पहला यूज केस है वो एहसास प्रोग्राम का है कि यू हैव लाइक डिजिटल वॉलेट and now even the guy is not paying you any money, he is just only transferring from his wallet to the merchant wallet the money, and 1000 can still come from the government. सही है. हाँ, तो बहुत आगे की चीज़ है. सही कह रहे हैं, आगे की चीज़ है, लेकिन these things will happen. अगर आप, क्योंकि देखो टेक्नोलॉजी को कोई नहीं रोक सकता. टेक्नोलॉजी ना ये होती है, इट्स जस्ट like oxygen, you cannot just stop it. अब ये फोन है, हर एक के पास फोन है, you cannot just stop people to have phones. और so टेक्नोलॉजी को रोका नहीं जा सकता. जी. यस, हाँ ये यस, बिल्कुल बिल्कुल जी, बिल्कुल बिल्कुल जी। आप कोई क्वेश्चन कर रहे थे कोई? यार एक मिनट ठहरिएगा जरा, मैं आपकी ना आवाज नहीं आ रही मुझे। आप बाकी जाना चाहें तो जा सकते हैं, मैं इनका सवाल ले लूँ। जी आप बताएं। जी बताइएगा आप। जी जी मुझे किसी और ने भी ये कहा कि उससे डिक्रिप्ट नहीं हो रहा। जी हम इसको देख लेते हैं, ये मेरा ख्याल हमारे जो मुझे हेल्प कर रहे हैं
तो सॉल्व हो जाएगी।
अच्छा वो कह रहे हैं जी आप खुद जनरेट करें तो सॉल्व हो जाएगी प्रॉब्लम। यू जनरेट द कीज योरसेल्फ इन द सेम सॉफ्टवेयर। दोबारा बताएं। मैंने उधर से जनरेट करके दी हुई है दरअसल ना, तो मैंने लेकिन ये भी लिखा हुआ है नीचे कि आप चाहे खुद से जनरेट कर लें।
सर हम ये कह रहे थे कि रिसर्च प्रोग्राम को वाकई ब्लॉकचेन पे करना है और सक्सेसफुली करना है तो नेशनल बैंक से ना बाकी कोई भी बैंक पकड़ लेता है।
सही।
तो मेरे ख्याल से वो स्टेट बैंक की भी वो होगी, लिमिटेशन होगी नेशनल बैंक।
हाँ
लेकिन नेशनल बैंक को तो सर पहले ऑनलाइन ही कर ले तो बड़ी बात है सर, ब्लॉकचेन तो
सही है।
थैंक यू सर।
थैंक यू जी, थैंक यू यार। ये उसको खत्म कर लें तो
जो इससे पहले आप जो असाइनमेंट 5 है